Everybody, and welcome back to another all-new X is for Show, your premier media response team. And of course, we are responding today to 30 years ago. I don't know if you guys heard, but it's the 30th anniversary of 30 years ago. So you can check the show out on X is for Show on all your social medias. As for me, I'm Nico, and you guys can check me out on all my social medias at Nico Action. That's NICOACTION.
And I am TK, and you can check me out at TK Elemental.
And that makes me your producer, Kevo. You can find me at Kevo Really. That's KEVOREALLY. Are the 90s? Why are the 90s so influential? Why 1993 in particular? Who knows? Hey, Tori, we got show friend and contributor Tori Sheen in the audience.
Hi, Tori.
She was bummed to miss 1993 last week, but she's here now.
Well,
that's all
I just want to say briefly, just to start this off, just to kind of get it out of the way. I am broadcasting the unbelievable See Here Now festival in Asbury Park. I am out of my gourd excited. I'm going to be seeing the Killers, Sheryl Crow, Foo Fighters, Tegan and Sarah. It is just absolutely bonkers here. The streets are flooded with joy. And so everybody who's a regular viewer knows that my background actually is
oh Lord.
You can see it in the window. We can see there's beach in his window.
Right.
He's super stoked. Hey buddy, welcome back.
His job is just beach.
His job is just beach. He is enough for us, and we are super excited that he is able to join the show despite technical difficulties, hotel Wi-Fi's, as Tori said. We did a show from this hotel once before.
We did, and it went very well. So we've just gotta hope that Nico finds the sweet spot in the hotel room.
That was the weekend, I think, of, but not the same coverage as our last coverage to feature Power Rangers, I believe. Is that correct? I think it's from the Ranger Duty one.
I remember talking about Star Wars.
Yes, that one was in the hotel. I think it was just that one. That was the one that was in the hotel. Oh!
Hi.
Look at that!
How we doing? Okay.
You can kind of see it's the actual background from my background.
Yeah.
I tried to share the magic with you guys. I tried so hard, but in the end, it didn't really matter.
He is on the beach. He's got a balcony. He cannot go out on the balcony, but he is apparently just about to... Oh, wait, he's moving again. Okay.
Just for one quick reason. So
and there's dog in the mix.
We have two beautiful pets here on this show that, oh, come on, Buck. You want to stay with me for 1 sec, Buck? So this is my amazing dog. I love him more than anything in the whole world. He is my absolute best friend on the planet. Bucky is he knows all my secrets. He knows everything about me, and I love that dog more than life. I grew up not a dog person, so in 1993, I never could have imagined loving a dog the way I do. But I am just so excited to broadcast with you guys from this festival, from this unbelievable opportunity. I'm sharing this, of course, with my amazing partner, my wonderful boyfriend, Rich. He made this happen. And I just want to thank you guys for doing this a little different, doing it a little early so that I could be part of this. And so where was I in 1993? That's the big question that we want to know about all of you. You know, I just said I wasn't a dog lover. In 1993, I was an asthmatic who looked forward to when my parents would go to the Woodbury Commons outlets in upstate New York, and I would get to go to the Warner Brothers store, and I would get myself a nice Looney Tunes plush, or maybe an Animaniacs something. In 1993, where was I? I was loving outlet malls, like any gay boy in the suburbs in 1993. How about my two incredible co-hosts and partners?
1993. I was that was like peak getting into X-Men time.
Okay.
That was really like, you know, because so I was born in DC and then I moved to Maine, and we lived in the town of Kennebunkport, Maine, which is where the Bush compound is. And there was back then this tiny little comic shop there, and it was one of like very few shops that had any interest to me, because most of the shops were tourist shops. They were like, get a t-shirt, or like, you know, get saltwater taffy, but they weren't anything that if you lived there year round you would make use of. So the comic shop was one of,
if I can just to interact with that, just to give a little background on what you're saying so people understand. I don't think you've ever not lived in a tourist town in your whole life. I think you kind of always lived like safely in tourism zones. And for people who don't know, like I live 20 minutes from Asbury Park. I live in a tourism zone with Kevo.
I went to school in New York and Cambridge, Massachusetts, which were, you know, like New York is always a tourist town, but it's also like 8 other towns. And then Cambridge is pretty firmly a college town. So that was kind of my one time out. And then I was born in DC, but yeah, I mean, I've spent most of my life in tourism towns. I live in Portland, Maine now, which is very much a tourist town. But yeah, Portland wasn't actually even a tourist town back then. It really was. Kennebunkport was like the tourist town of Maine because it was where the Bush compound was, and this was during the Bush years. So a comic shop opened up right at the start of the Jim Lee craze. And like this guy, he's an older dude. He clearly loved the golden age, then didn't really care so much, but cared just enough, and was like, there, you know, this X-Men #1 is going to be worth $1 million one day. I should open a comic shop. And he's a really cool dude. His name was Bob. He was really nice to me.
That guy, Bob the comic guy, of course.
Bob the comic shop owner. He today he would definitely, they would put him in prison, but like he was super cool to me. He never tried to diddle me or anything, but he let me hang out in the shop.
I appreciate though that in the modern revival, he is a happening bisexual Muslim woman who's ready to take on the comic industry.
Yeah, it's definitely Roberta in the remake. But yeah, I mean, I would hang out there all day. I watched the cartoon and like figured out what all the insane continuity was. And then as we talked about a little bit last week and maybe during our Thursday episode, this was when Magic the Gathering was coming out. So that same comic shop was where I started playing Magic the Gathering. That was like my life. Hanging out at that comic shop, reading comics, learning to play Magic the Gathering. And it was a really wild time to be a geek. I was also 8, so it was totally safe. And I got to get really into it at a time where just like I wasn't old enough for there to be jocks to beat me up over it. Oh, also we were super into Pogs. Pogs were amazing.
Yes.
Was that when Pogs were? Now I'm just not like to challenge you, but I really want to know what the window was on Pogs for a second.
Pogs was 4th grade for me, which was 94.
Yeah,
but
94,
yeah,
95.
90. Yeah.
But it was building. I remember
Yeah,
they posted on the early Power Rangers wave too.
Yeah, and like I had them in 93, but nobody else did. It was 94 when like my school got into them. And anyway, Kevo, 93. Oh, sorry, Nico.
Kevo. No, I was going to say, well, damn. No, I just wanted to be like, well, no, I love this. Kevo, you've had such great reactions to where we were in 93. I can't wait for these two chuckleheads to have reactions to where you were in 1993.
No, yeah, 1993. That would be the second half of 1st grade, first half of 2nd grade. That was the December where I broke my arm.
Oh, no.
Yeah, super dramatic. Yeah, this was, you know, a wild time. It was the start of Power Rangers. It was the end of a lot of other things. This was the summer where Shanice appeared on Welcome Freshmen, and for some reason that like super imprinted on me, and that I didn't rediscover the song Smile by Shanice until I was an adult. And it's such a really cute song.
Psych.
Psych. Yeah, you know, I love all the things you said about the malls because it's so funny to think about the fact that you and I grew up so close to each other. We went to the same malls and we didn't meet until we were like 21. So we have a lot of the same frames of reference for things like that because we grew up only 20, 30 minutes apart, but didn't meet until we grew up. So even though we have very similar things in our upbringing because we are from a similar area and everything, it's not identical.
Well, and I actually want to say what's so interesting is I feel like you and I were only separated by not having identical interests despite being so close. If our interests were a little more similar, we might have wound up, meeting up a little sooner. TK, the only reason that you and I didn't meet up was actually the distance. If we'd been a little closer, we might have met up a little sooner. So I'm always really fascinated by like the overlap of our like triple experience. Though there is one thing about 1993 I need to confess on air. I did the math on it. In 1993, my elementary school teacher said, "Class, your assignment is to pick a celebrity and write them a letter. And it can be any celebrity in the whole world. I have a book of celebrity fan clubs." And so for those of you who don't know, before there was an internet, you would buy things like a celebrity fan club register book, and it would allow you like the official Elvis fan club, the official Graceland fan club, the original, like there was like information.
What happened to that industry? Right?
So I wrote Mariah Carey a letter saying that she's my inspiration, my love, my light, and my life. And if she could please just send me a demo of unreleased music she's never sent anyone else, or I guess an autographed picture, that would be great. And she sent me the autographed picture. All said and done, that's really fine. I did ultimately send a follow-up letter, but we won't get into that because that didn't happen in 1993. But there was, in fact, a somewhat sassy and I guess disappointed follow-up letter. But anyway, in 1993, I was exactly this guy. I was just smaller.
With more hair.
So, guys, I had the most beautiful Cuban hair, Cuban and Greek, this thick, beautiful hair. And at the time, I couldn't appreciate it because I didn't know what it meant to like look different than the mainstream, which is really interesting because that is really a lot of what 1993 is about. It's about identifying the mainstream and then confronting it in ways that are in regard to our understanding of identity. I think about what so many Black women went through in the early 90s being portrayed as secondary, and the angry Black woman trope or the sort of mom trope. And I think about how much of our media that we were given was specifically those iterations of cultures that were not necessarily the premier dominant culture at the time. And I think about how what we're talking about when we talk about these movies, this music, the video games we're going to talk about today, the beautiful TV shows that Kevo pulled all of the images for to make that incredible title card for today's episode. TK, you did address this last week, and I really want to point to it again. One of the things you said was by virtue of acknowledging primarily the best sellers, one of the things we're limiting ourselves is the opportunity to look at the depth of things like Shanice. Kevo, mentioning Shanice while we're listening to Janet Jackson, one of only two artists to have multiple number ones in 1993. It's two artists of Black heritage. That's Janet Jackson and Mariah Carey. So there were Black women thriving. But the reality is, what we're talking about when we talk about 1993 is a very specific slice of the identity that makes up the metasphere of 1993 as we're looking at it. So, TK, your words last week have really sat with me for a week. They really have made me think a little bit more about what I was saying. And Kevo, for you to so readily, and I mean this, sweetheart, you are the premier version of this. But honey, you are white boy. You are like, and you grew up in white boy town and you grew up with white boy things. But you are a young white man you were a young white man, and now you are a proud adult white man.
You're still young. You're spring chicken.
But, not a proud white man, but you're a.
Nico, where are you going with this?
Save him.
I'm trying to say that, like, while you did grow up the most sheltered, protected, corn-fed white boy just this side of the farm, your adulthood represents something very different. So that even when you talk about 1993, your identity of 1993 involves Shanice, a woman who is a black woman whose pop single was not the number one song in 1993. We're talking about the ability to take a look at this holistically. So while we know this is not a view that represents everybody and every voice, I do just, TK, those words really stuck with me. And I just want to give credit to all of the things in 1993 that we're not celebrating in this episode because every one of them deserves celebration.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we identified early on. I mean, Kevo, it was you. Like, this was your idea, but like what we identified was like this is a crucial year. And I've gone and looked at other years around this, and like, yeah, when it comes down to it, a lot of stuff from the early 90s, of course, became the stuff that we loved. But I don't know that we could do the same thing next year. With the same gusto. I know
It was
we could.
exactly the word I was going to use, gusto.
I know we could put together. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the next point I was seeing was like maybe 1998, but I'd have to really look.
Yeah.
Actually, 97, 98, 2000, 2001, 2003, 2006. I actually looked into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this isn't like, the year in which all the stuff aligns like this. And there's so much great stuff from all channels. That does not happen all the time.
And one of the things that I'm actually really excited to talk about once we get into the subject matter and we start talking about television, not just the things that started in 1993, but there's a significant number of things that ended in 1993 that it's really fascinating that we were entering this new wave of television while so many things were going out at the same time.
If I can add one thing to that just there was no room on our list for this identity. TK, 1993 was the girly show.
Yeah.
The entire Madonna girly show tour that literally has gone on to define the identity of a big over-the-top sexual awakening woman tour. The thing that every female artist has imitated since 1993 was 1993.
Yeah, I mean, and she had published Sex the year before. So it was really the point of what do you do after a controversy so insane you might literally be killed for, you know what I mean? Like, not
Waiting is the hardest thing. I tell myself if I believe in you and the dream of you with all my heart and all my soul. I almost put Rain on the list because it technically hit number one as a single in 1993.
Yeah. I would not have blamed you for doing so. The music was one of the wilder ones we did because that, like, I kept bringing up, those were the number ones, not our number ones, which we had. I had just a list of alternative rock songs from 1993 that could have been a full bracket, not even a half bracket, let alone the pop songs that we didn't include because they weren't the number ones, but they're just ones that we know, remember, and love.
I could have a full bracket of songs featuring Chris Cornell or Eddie Vedder.
There you go.
I think maybe before the end of 2023, we should do just another 1993 wrap up. Yeah, an hour maybe.
Yeah. Oh no, I meant like our stuff rather than the top selling or top rate, whatever.
Let's just go month by month. We're gonna go 12 hours, and we're just gonna talk about 1993 forever.
Done.
All right, it's 1924. No, I mean that's the timestamp. It's still 1993.
We got it.
So I am really excited to get into our material today because do we want to start with movies or games?
Well, it's TV, so that would be...
You know why I said movies? Because, TK, you're rocking that beautiful 1993, a very big year movie, god damn it, movie banner behind you. So I immediately likened that to today's awesome episode, which actually just reminds me, we keep saying last week's episode, but what we're referring to is 1993 Part 1, which came out last week. Tori, listen to me, Tori.
She's not wrong. Tori suggested do 1993 again when we hit 1993 subscribers.
Oh no, I'm only mad that it's brilliant. It's brilliant and also hard to get to. So we're gonna do it when we reach 199.3 subscribers.
If you want to be that third of a
192,
subscriber, talk to us
I-
about how you got there.
Trust me, there are days I feel like a third of a person on this show.
Too true.
All right, so do we want to start with movies or video games?
We're starting with
next, Drew?
TV.
I said movies
Again.
again. I
You did
quit
in fact
move.
say movies again. We're starting with TV. I got
Okay.
TV locked and loaded.
Okay.
Yeah, you do.
So
All right.
we will be starting there.
Will
Nico,
Farnsworth, let's go.
no, hold on. Do you have your names for each pairing?
I've got all of them. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got all that locked and loaded.
Okay. Then give me a moment, and we will in fact start.
Contrary to popular,
So-
I was going to say, contrary to
yeah.
popular opinion, I am not any sort of like having too good a time yet. I am like, this is my first ever broadcast where I'm very aware of my dog walking around the room while I'm in the broadcast. So those of you who don't know, my dog lives with my boyfriend Rich, and I've never been like TK, my other beautiful boyfriend. I don't know how you do this, dude. Like every 10 seconds, I'm like, is Bucky okay?
I
Is he
mean,
okay?
it's so easy with Judy because she is a full-grown adult who's more responsible than I am. When it's
And you're not at home too.
right.
I'm
When
like,
it's-
he's
there's
just
a
my
lot
whole
of there's a
world.
lot of shows where I have the baby with me as well, and that's when I'm really. You can see me doing a lot of that when I have both girls with me. Viewer at
I don't
home,
have
if you
the
see me
baby
doing
with
a
me.
lot of these, that's because I have 2 dogs, and the other one that is not here with me today is a handful. Judy is right by my side, and she is just straight chilling.
I don't have the baby with me today. He's staying in a hotel.
Oh,
That's me. No, but just
Um,
I'm so happy to be a doggy daddy, and that dog is my whole world. And like, just like when I'm with him, I feel better. And so like I'm so excited to have him a part of the broadcast, you guys. But I am a little hyper aware because I've never had the dog in a hotel room and broadcast at the same time. So thank you all for your patience because I'm going to keep walking off screen to check on him.
Kevo, are you able to add my my screen to the screen? Thank you. I don't
Yeah,
know why
it's
it wasn't letting me do it.
So, I want to say before we get into the TV stuff, though, like I had said,
Yeah.
So this wasn't just a year of beginnings.
Mhm,
This was also a wild year of TV endings.
mhm.
This television era saw the ending of Cheers, original Saved by the Bell. It saw the graduation of the first class of 90210. So this was the season of Donna Martin graduates. It was the end of the Wonder Years. It was the end of Golden Girls, technically, because it was the series finale of Golden Palace. It was the end of Perfect Strangers. Like, on top of all the new stuff we're about to see, this is a lot of, like, it's a really wild season.
And it's also a really pivotal point in pop culture in terms of recognizing, even if this wasn't the point where we maybe put a pin in grunge, if this wasn't the point we put a pin in the Arnold action movie, we really were moving to that mid 90s must see TV NBC feeling. You know what I mean? Everybody's trying to get one of them cell phones. You know what I mean? It felt like a very different product. It felt like a very different time. And as a result, I think one of the things that we saw exceptionally happen that shifted pop culture was an idea that it was important to be topical. When I think about the ideas that predominated pop culture leading up to this, one of the big things was a focus on the accessibility and the humanity of the everyday. Sitcom used to mean there was an overwhelming situation that we would never best. We would always be poor. Even if we weren't poor, we might be the Jeffersons and always face a class struggle by virtue of our color. But there was an identity in the 1990s, and it was virtually born of the show Friends, that said, let's focus on a topicality related to our temporal state as opposed to a situational state. And I think that redefining is a lot of what you're saying, Kevo. There was a transition out for an identity of programming as this new programming came in.
Huh. I really got to think about that.
I haven't stumped you like that since our X-Men days, so I'm gonna take that as a win, big man.
Yeah.
Woo!
All right, so let's talk about some. Kevo, what is the title for this bracket? Brack me.
Big Sci-Fi X-Files versus Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
This is fucking asking me to pick between left and right nut. This is
Why
absolutely
did we put
insanity.
this first?
This is brutal. This is inhumane. All right, I guess I'm gonna have to give it. If I'm giving it, and I don't want to give it, I'm not giving it freely. I'm charging, right? In the Mayflower Madam of this moment for me, hey, check me out, 1993. I have to give it to Deep Space Nine, and let me say why. Major Kira Nerys is still a woman I would marry right this minute, right now, right today. She is my, she is sort of my female Israeli queen in the way that she's clearly meant to represent an Israeli freedom fighter in space. I just, damn, Deep Space Nine is one of the most important things in the history of my life. Deep Space Nine.
Ooh, is Deep Space Nine going to be Tori's Trek when she gets to it? I feel
God
like she's
willing,
going to love
bless.
Kira. She's going to love Kira and Odo. Oh, yeah.
Booked and blessed, baby. Booked and blessed.
Booked and blessed indeed. Teak.
For me, it's X-Files all the way.
The breaker.
I was not at the time. I was not about a stationary trek through the stars, and I very much have grown to appreciate it. I'm balancing between the reflective and the retrospective, and where I was. What?
No, you just literally proved something to me. I have to change my vote. Star Trek Space Nine is my show, but how the fuck is it a stationary trek? No. I have to give it to X-Files. X-Files is more 1993.
That's not, that's... Boo.
More 93. I have to, Deep Space Nine is my show, but...
Fine, I can guilt-free vote Deep Space Nine.
For me, I was also going to say X-Files is more 1993. Like, X-Files had music. I remember, for some reason, even though I already loved them, I gave myself permission to love Live after All Over You is in an episode of X-Files. I don't know why.
Song by Live. There are no bad songs by Live.
No,
Live is one of those perfect bands.
Correct.
If we're talking 93, let's just talk Live for a minute. Perfect band. Keep going.
Yes. And that's why I was like, why are we not doing alternative rock? Because yes. But anyway, so there's a moment in X-Files where All Over You by Live plays, and I was like, oh, for some reason that was it's officially okay to like this band that I love anyway. So just, it to me is much more 1993. I think I took more from what the X-Files gave me from the horror and the shift to myth arc than I did from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because I was already starting to get there from Star Trek with the very few episodes that had it in The Next Generation. And the X-Files just really redefined myth arc in predominantly episodic television more than basically any other show besides Twin Peaks.
Kevo, I love this reformatting. I love this bottom position.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Kevo, talk to me. You know, I know that X-Files is your live-action Gargoyles, but at the same time, just like
don't make statements like that for me.
Formative big myth arc show that you came to me preloaded with.
You know, I am going to give Deep Space Nine at least a protest vote, because I really agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. But when it comes to how well I feel either of these concepts or franchises have aged, I think that Deep Space Nine has aged better than the X-Files, especially in terms of longevity and continuation. And really giving us a soft amount more, not overdoing it the way... We quit the X-Files continuation from the mid-2010s. Tori
that was not great.
We did not get Carter.
No.
As opposed to, like, the sparing bits of ways that we have seen Deep Space Nine be referenced back to in continued Star Trek canon, and the ways that they have sort of specifically gone out of their way to be like, let's not touch something that we might ruin. I feel like Deep Space Nine has aged better from the 90s, but I'm not like actually fighting you guys. X-Files is so friggin' classic 90s. It's impossible to argue.
Also, the worst possible version of White Men Can't Jump would be done by Cisco and Mulder, and that would just be, speaking of 93.
Oh, this is why I don't do this. Tori asks if TNG was on in 1993. That was another one where that was actually the end of TNG. It was entering its final season in 1993.
Yep.
Let's try up.
Oh. Yeah, Tori just pointed out that those are my X-Files DVDs on her floor. For those who don't know,
Yep.
Tori Sheehan is not just one of our awesome contributors, but she is like actually my creative partner in all things. There has yet to be a project that Tori and I aren't a part of. So if there's going to be somebody I trust my out-of-print French-Canadian, French-printed DVD set of the X-Files with, it's Tori Sheehan.
So did you, Nico, did you settle on X-Files? Was that legit?
I did. It's more 93.
Okay. So
All
she
right.
wins.
I see this next bracket.
Yeah.
I already said where my heart lied in 93.
Yeah.
It is with Yakko, Wacko, and Dot. I can still do a bunch of songs from Animaniacs, from memory. This is one of my all-time favorite shows in terms of like enculturation. If for no other reason, it wasn't afraid to do things like Les Mis with cats and dogs for fag kids. And I was a fag kid who needed Bernadette Peters to sing to me as a cat with what is only possibly describable as the of mice and men of dog counterparts in a way that has only been matched in recent history by Britney on Glee.
That genuinely was my first impression of Les Mis, and as someone who would then be in Les Mis his senior year of high school, going back and watching Les Miserables and understanding as an adult, because so many of those parodies are like, what, Les Mis, like it's not even trying. But going back and watching and seeing the ways in which, those parodies, the Good Feathers parody of West Side Story,
oh my god. Sorry,
I want to perch on Scorsese's head. All those things really were so genuine.
I just need to add really quick, I'm going to nominate a 60-year-old Sherilyn Fenn to play Slappy the Squirrel in a live-action adaptation.
1000%. 1000%. 1000%.
Yeah, I want to drink another cup of coffee.
Oh my god, I only wish that could be on this list.
Well, I'm stoked that you guys are both clearly voting for Animaniacs, because that means I can vote for Beavis and Butthead, because it's a really tough call for me, and I want to give Beavis and Butthead its props for being such a fulcrum point of 1993 culture that also, birthed Daria and birthed all of Mike Judge's later works, which would go on to be so important. And it all
King of the Hill is very, very, very good.
King of the Hill is fantastic. Office Space is amazing. Daria is from Beavis and Butthead, and I think Daria is like one of the most important shows ever made. I think...
Okay, but Daria is from Beavis and Butthead the way, Laverne and Shirley is from Love American Style. Let's just pump the brakes.
Close.
Daria's first appearance is in Beavis and Butthead. Daria would not exist.
My first appearance was in my mom, but I would not want to be defined by her.
And yet...
Hold on, let me speed. I'll call my mommy.
Exactly. So, anyway, Beavis and Butthead is important. But Animaniacs, I feel like Beavis and Butthead spoke to people who were already enmeshed in the culture, where Animaniacs taught the kids how to get into the culture. And
Oliver Stone does next Home Alone, which means there's going to be a sequel next year, taught me that a big name director could guarantee a sequel even if they didn't direct it. Whereas Beavis and Butthead talked about music videos by Soundgarden I was watching anyway.
Right. There is so much stuff that, like, you know, Animaniacs was so smart, and it taught us all. And Tori says the importance of Beavis and Butthead is unbelievable, but my interest in it is negative a million. Yeah, that's basically how I feel. I didn't think it was funny, but I was excited about the music videos, especially. I think it worked better as an intercut on MTV's programming. I don't think it was great as its own show. But
as
then
always, my big brother could save television if they would just let him program it.
Thank you. What that also did was create the MTV animation boom with the Max, the Head, Aeon Flux. I mean,
and the idea of credibility of television on MTV in a way that led to things like we've discussed, like Undressed and MTV Sphere, as well as things like Spider Games.
So, you know, if I was the tiebreaker, I would be having a lot more trouble with this vote.
Yeah.
Clone High, exactly.
Yes, mama.
Thank you, Tori. If I was the tiebreaker, I would be having a lot more trouble. But since it's definitely Animaniacs, I am giving my vote to Beavis and Butthead because it is super important.
That's one of the fun things about this game, where like once there's already a decision made, you can just be like, I get to say whatever I want.
Yeah, and then we get to talk about it a little bit. Oh man, Nico,
No.
I don't know how I feel about this category. By the way,
I believe I described it as strong women.
Nope, that's not what the category is, Kevo.
It is, and I want you to explain this. TV for women, but.
TV for women, but it's very different women, okay? So I have Okay, first of all, I just want to point out that I have a pitch that could save Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, and people just don't even understand how good my pitch for Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman would be. I'm trying to find the chat.
Well, then before you do your pitch, I also want to say I super appreciate Tasty Cake also knowing about the Laverne and Shirley and Mork and Mindy connections through Happy Days and Love American Style. That is our ish for sure. And love your vote for Animaniacs. Nico, do you have your pitch? Oh God, from earlier today? Is that what we're talking about?
Hold on. First off, before I want to,
intellectual theft.
This would not have happened without me. So I'm saying my pitch first. I do think yours might have been better.
I forgot you were the most important person in all of Living Single.
I first asked if they should update and do a remake of Dr. Quinn called Doc Quinn Medicine Bitch. And I think that would be a great show.
Well, you're all spared because I can't find what chat I said it in. And if one of you boys...
It was...
I updated it to Dr. Q. Oh, no, Doc Q, Medicine Warrior. And then Nico changed it to... Hold on. I almost had it copied, and I was going to put it in a... Because it is so long, and you are such an...
I remember it. I'll read it right off as soon as you put it in.
Loading up now.
Dr. Quinn Patel, medicine bitch, director of an LGBT wagon trail clinic and popper's shop. I don't think that Dr. Quinn could do better than being a beautiful mixed-race woman who sells both poppers and AZT as necessary on the Oregon Trail. Wait, did Dr. Quinn take place in the Oregon Trail? I know nothing about this show.
We also agreed it would be in space. Doc Quinn Patel, medicine bitch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I could see this, you know, eventually he's going to be in a lot of trouble financially, and Joss Whedon's going to have to start selling IP. I would buy Firefly, and put Doc Quinn Patel, medicine bitch, director of LGBTQ Wagon Trail Clinic and Popper Shop, into the world of Firefly.
And I would switch a Shepherd book with Mallory book from She-Hulk. But I just need to go on firm record and say, what is more 1993? 100-year-old white women or Queen Latifah you can suck Queen Latifah's beautiful paycheck right off the equalizer. I am not here to listen to any nonsense that says anything other than Living Single is a seminal program for its generation. While certainly Dr. Quinn is part of an oeuvre that is fulvre of wonderful, I think you could just as easily point to the success of something as like Touched by an Angel, or maybe even the male-led later success of something like Early Edition, or maybe even my personal favorite of this brand of show, the incredible Joan of Arcadia, where all you need to get over your dead friend is to learn to juggle. I think that Dr. Quinn is part of a network of shows that are very, very well preserved. But Living Single is one of a very bold few in its class that is given the time and respect by history. And so we got to give it up to both Kims, Queen Latifah, and everyone else that was on Living Single, because they did something no one else was brave enough to do, and they did it on network television.
Yeah, Dr. Quinn, like, there is a thing about it and the ilk of show. Like, I also think about Kung Fu and like
Ooh, an Outlander.
I was gonna say you could even go further. Like, it then goes into Xena and like all of those, like Hercules, all the low budget mid Saturday afternoon shows of the 90s. Dr. Quinn was totally
it was Saturday primetime, so it was really one of the last American Saturday primetime shows.
Yeah.
Because Golden Girls had been a Saturday night program, and that just seems so fucking foreign to us nowadays.
What is Saturday night? What is Friday night programming like?
Exactly, but.
And then, like, you know, I think about like Little House. Anyway, so like those are all great. They're fine. There's like there's another bracket in which Dr. Quinn could win, but it's not this one. Like, it doesn't even. I was actually surprised to even see it associated with 1993. I didn't really remember when it ran, like when it started, when it was popular, when it ended. And I mean, same thing with Little House on the Prairie, same thing with Kung Fu. They all kind of blend together for me, where Living Single really did just kind of define the era in a lot of ways on television. And it picked up on like the cultural impact that groups like TLC were having. And, you know, I mean, like, long story short, the vote is Living Single, and very proudly so.
Oh,
on camera, but I just want to point out that something else that Living Single offered was black men in support of black women, and certainly I do not have the melanin to discuss how important that was, but I have heard so many wonderful voices within the black community, both men and women, define how importantly transformative it was to see black men in supportive roles of women, not simply being the lead and taking the show, but instead allowing the women to thrive within the scope of the program itself. And I just think that needs to be cited as something that no show had sought to attempt in the same way.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you got?
I don't remember.
What about your vote?
Oh, Living Single for sure. I also never really got the Dr. Quinn thing. I never really got a lot of these CBS dramas. I only recently, for the first time, learned a lot of the details about Touched by an Angel. I never knew it was so literal. I always thought it was one of those shows where it's a little bit more like, are they angels? Wink. But like, no, there's like superpowers and shit. It's pretty literal. It's pretty in your face. I had no idea. The most I know about Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman is that the son grew up gay, and there's a reference on The Simpsons where Marge is going out on Saturday, and Homer is deeply upset. And Marge is like, what do we have going on Saturday nights? And Homer says, a little thing called Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And that's lived in my head for like 30 years. But other than that,
if Homer lived in a world where people were okay with aliens, he could have totally been Mulder on the X-Files.
He met Mulder from the X-Files.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
All right.
Tori says, wait, how white is the town I grew up in? Dr. Quinn had us in a chokehold, and living single I learned about as being friends but black. And we grew up in the same town. I'd believe that. That sounds like my town. My mom wasn't into Dr. Quinn. She was really into Christy, though. Remember Christy?
Was that
It
one
was
of the
with,
American Girl dolls?
It was, but no, it was also this like pioneer girl novel, and it was starring the woman who went on to play the girl on ER who got stabbed.
Oh, God, I loved her. God, when she
Yeah,
got
my
stabbed on
mom.
ER.
Nico, picture my mother,
My hero.
40-year-old Beth Mulvaney, when that character got stabbed.
I was obsessed with her.
She was troubled. Yeah, she loved that girl from Christie, and so when that happened on ER, she was deeply upset.
The chick who was super into Noah Wiley. Yeah. Oh
Yes.
my God, I love her. Yes, that was.
Yes.
I wanted to see her. I thought I was her, and then I discovered Ainsley Hayes. Well,
and this is one season too early for ER, I think. By the way, ER, yes, was next television season.
All right, let's hit our next show.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was Cranford. They were really into pioneers. We thought we were pioneers. We weren't.
So I just want to say, speaking of this particular challenge, I don't know that I really have a lot to say, positive or negative, about Saved by the Bell, the college years. I recognize its cultural impact, but the thing that I really react to about this particular challenge is I felt like it's going to sound so dumb, but like I felt like puberty for me really was kind of a little bit closer to like Star Butterfly's puberty, where it was like, what form would it take? Everybody was going to go through all the same exact physical things, but mine was going to be like a cocoon, and I was going to come out this magical creature. And like, I never thought I was going to come out this magical creature like Big Loud Gay Boy. I kind of always thought, like in 1993, I thought my future was going to be, I was going to somehow be Eddie Vedder in Boys to Men. And I felt like nothing really addressed feeling so strange the way Boy Meets World did. Saved by the Bell, the new class really missed me. While the college years was filled with characters I found very coming of age, very sexually identifiable. Like to this day, I do say that, Mario Lopez is one of the most beautiful men that has ever lived on the planet.
And you love what's her name, who went on to play Nora on Desperate Housewives. She was one of the co-eds on College Years.
I love watching her get shot. Anyway,
yeah, you do.
It's my favorite moment in television history is watching her get shot and Felicity Huffman covered in blood having an anxiety attack in the middle of a supermarket.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was on College Years.
That's Alex on the college.
Okay.
Yep.
It is Nora on Desperate Housewives. Let's
No, I
correct
know,
the
but
frame
we're not
of reference.
talking about that right now. We're talking about jabroni.
If I got to pick a group of guys to give it to, as much as I sexually identified my growing into a man and the things I found attractive from elements of college years, the guys from Boy Meets World really represented feeling less lonely. And if you're asking me what I needed in 1993, it was a friend. It was somebody who was like, bro, I'm the same. You're not weird. For no reason other than I felt weird. And Boy Meets World gave me something.
For some reason, Boy Meets World did nothing for me.
Remove him from the broadcast. Add Tori. She'll
take me out. Do it. I don't know why. I really can't. I don't know why. I might be
fair. It doesn't sound like you're saying you hate it. It just didn't grab you, and that's really completely, totally, absolutely fair for any piece of art, really.
I think having older siblings, I had a sister who was significantly older than I was, who was 13 years older than I was.
Well, and you had cool older sisters.
I had very cool
older sisters.
I had very cool older sisters. I had another sister who was 3 years older than me, which was like, by that point, she was like a cool middle schooler. So I had cool siblings to look up to. I had very little parental supervision at this point. So like I was already fully into 90210. Like Saved by the Bell felt a little cheesy for me. And so graduating them to college, I was like, okay, this is like a little more.
I was gonna say, so
no,
especially
excuse me,
during
Tori
this era
Spelling
where it
showed up.
changed over.
When Tori Spelling showed up as Violet
Yeah.
and sang flawlessly,
That was
you're
a wild
telling me-
crossover moment, 100%.
Okay, if you were about to tell me that didn't move you to tears,
No.
I would piss in your cornflakes.
Bum. No, 100%. That was a moment. I loved the synergy there, but still, I was just like, high school Saved by the Bell, you know, like I'm already watching Emily Valentine introduce everybody to Euphoria and trying to figure out how I can get my hands on some of that. Took a while. I think I legitimately asked at some point in middle school about it, and somebody was like, "Do you mean ecstasy?" So anyway, I was already there, so Boy Meets World just felt a little remedial for me. Also, Bob Golick as their like dorm dad, I think
You
made
mean
me gay?
guys, Bobcat Goldthwait?
That was
No,
that was an interesting choice.
No, I really always thought that basically their professor, the guy that they live for,
Their Madam
Oh.
Fortress daddy, yeah. The
Are
guy
you-
in the
I
poster
think you were
there.
talking about a different person, Nico.
I
Because you're
realized that. I realized that I thought you meant that their professor was basically a sexy Bobcat Goldthwait, and he is.
No, his name is Bob Golick. He's a football player. That's why he is giant and muscly like that. And I was super gay for him.
Oh,
He had a
me
mullet.
too. But the mullet is the part that is so 1983 and
mullet.
so far away from me.
Yeah.
I don't know how all y'all did it. I couldn't.
So that's my vote. Break the tie.
Look, a man is a man, and in 1993, your choices for man were.
Yeah, like I wasn't into Mr. Feeney. I wasn't even into Eric's dad.
Oh no, Eric's dad did it for me. Oh
No.
shit, no. Mr. Matthews? Nah,
No, thanks,
Mr. Matthews.
I get that.
I get it, but not for
1000%.
me. No.
He had
Or-
he seemed like he could tell me how to use tools, which is something that I find incredibly sexy.
And Mr. Turner again, mullet though. If he'd had a better haircut, like when he showed up on Girl Meets World, he had a better haircut. I was like, sure, yeah. Tori says the English teacher, but I can't.
Mr.
for the
Turner,
mullet.
you mean proto
Couldn't
Mr.
then-
Shoe?
Couldn't then, can't now. Yeah, like super Brooklyn Mr. Shoe, basically.
Hey, it's me.
Tori
I'm gonna
said-
coach a glee club.
Tori said Saved by the Bell never held interest for her. Boy Meets World major to her teen's weirdness. Yeah, me too.
Agreed.
You know.
Hold on, and I got to point
What?
out a fact that I had kind of remembered, but do you all know who the dean of their college was?
Yeah, married to
Mr. Feeney's
what's
wife.
his name?
Yeah, the racist from Golden Girls.
Nope.
What?
She's those things.
Yeah, she is. She's all those things.
It's
On Boy
Holland
Meets
Taylor.
World? Oh, but Saved by the Bell. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, 100% correct. Okay, we were talking about Boy Meets World. It's Feeney's
beautiful
wife.
older woman. Sorry.
Yeah, no, insane. And like the next major thing that I can think of her from in the 90s is when she shows up as the boss on Veronica's Closet and the guy that everyone thinks is gay sexes her to death.
She show like Veronica's Closet. We should have an entire episode about watching Veronica's Closet. When Kathy and Jimmy came out too skinny to ride a vacuum cleaner, I was like witchcraft.
I also think we should make a show called Veronica Mars's Closet.
I'm here to investigate all of the dead bodies in fashion.
Break this tie, Kevo.
So, I had a 4 years older sister. So in 1994, when I was in first grade, she was in like, I guess then fifth. Robbie points out he was not alive in 1993. Well, what is your
Christ, Robbie?
But
Robbie, you
know,
are lucky. You are so damn beautiful.
that you're here to
because
learn.
it's like that. God damn.
So my sister was definitely into Saved by the Bell, and she was that like want to be the next older generation age bracket, so she was also like into 90210, all of that stuff.
Very middle school with a Pulp Fiction soundtrack in 1994.
Well,
Got it.
they're very Gen X cuspers. Like our sisters are similar age, and like because I had another sister who was full Gen X, my sister is like fully one foot in both worlds. Anyway, continue.
So I was very aware of this schism in Saved by the Bell, where it became the new class and college years immediately failed, and the new class was sort of immediately forgotten. But here's the thing, and I brought up a note that I have, because I have these notes that I keep about pop culture that I'm always talking about, and something that I wrote down for me to keep in mind if I ever write something about celebrities. Saved by the Bell, the new class, across 7 seasons, had 16 main cast regulars.
And nobody is the same regular from season 1 to season 7, with the exception of Belding.
It lasted 143 episodes and had that many students. So I have this note being like any actor who's around like 40 or 50 in 2020 can have been on that show. Because there are just that much of a rotating cast. It's almost like Degrassi. It's wild.
Did Mr. Belding turn out to be a pervert?
No,
he played a pervert on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
And then wouldn't perv, and it devastated Gay Mac.
That's why. No, and it's the truancy officer and Ferris Bueller, and they look kind of similar.
Thank you. That is what it is.
Yeah. All right, let's
Robbie,
so, Kevo, are you picking Boy Meets World?
Robbie never knew they had college seasons of Saved by the Bell. Interesting. Exactly. That's bizarre.
There were 2. They were garbage.
No, there's just one and 2 movies.
Thank you. Yes.
1 movie after college years, actually. There's Hawaiian.
Is it just the wedding movie?
College. Yes.
Yes, but I want to say why I count Hawaiian Style, because Hawaiian Style feels like a prequel to college years, but does not feel like part of the high school era.
I'll tell you what made Saved by the Bell fail was they never figured out how to get Leah Remini back as the lead of the entire thing, which should have been what happened.
She wanted to. She was actually interested in coming back for the Saved by the Bell revival from 2020.
I think that's a huge mistake not having her back there too.
Which is, she would have loved that. But
I think Leah Remini should have me back there, if you know what I mean.
We do know what
Break
you
this
mean.
tie, please.
My vote is definitely Boy Meets World. It's something that meant a lot more to me. I went back and rewatched some of the early stuff because I want to show Jonah Girl Meets World is my show more than Boy Meets World, actually, really weirdly. And so I went and was watching early stuff because I wanted to know what significant episodes I should show Jonah to be able to show him Girl Meets World. And I found like seasons 3 on to through 5 were a lot more significant than I thought. My seasons really are more 4 and 5. And then after they go to college, I kind of stop caring. Sorry.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I just wanted to say, I remember you saying to me, Bear, there's a really great discount on Boy Meets World on Amazon. It's like $60 for the whole series. Would you mind if I picked up the whole series? And I was just like, babe, go for it. That's such an available idea. The idea of a whole series for $60 encompassing your childhood. That's something that I think is so hard about the modern era for so many fans, where they're like, 3 seasons, that's not my show. 36 episodes, that can't be my show. We identify so much of our childhood by being able to plot our experience to Boy Meets World for 7 seasons. So I think what you're talking about, that, seasons 4 and 5 were your season, but Boy Meets World 7 seasons all mean something to you, represents the sort of idea of there are certain years in our lives that experience more importance. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about 1993 and Moss.
I think really weirdly, my love for Boy Meets World is what led to my love for One Tree Hill. That sort of uber emotional,
I get it.
kind of dramatic, but always heart forward type of storytelling.
I think something that we laugh about is our shared love of things like Melrose Place and, by extension, 90210 and the Aaron Spelling oeuvre. But I think there's maybe a little bit more in common between Boy Meets World and 90210 or Melrose Place than we're necessarily willing to always acknowledge, right? They loved that play of dramatic and that sort of like silly, that sort of like magical idea of fun that exists only in teenage years. It's something, Kevo's been having me rewatch Glee with him, and I have been having an amazing time. Even when the stories are kind of like, meh. The idea of Mika's We Are Golden, that idea of teenage perfection, that's something that I think lives on through the spirit of Boy Meets World to this day. And that's why I think, Kevo, you were able to have something like Girl Meets World. That idea of freedom of joy is so prevalent in Boy Meets World. Look, even though I know it's a children's animated show, Animaniacs did not have a prevalent spirit of joy. Animaniacs is mean-spirited and negative and funny and perfect, but it's mean-spirited and negative and funny the way Sophia Petrillo is, the way, to just connect it again, something like Glee benefits from having the mean-spirited humor of. TK, I've never really gotten your take on something like the transition into the fanaticism for the queer content of Glee. Whether or not it's your thing, because it's not my thing. I don't think Glee as a show is great. I think those musical producers are gods, and I think the cast are some of the most talented people I have ever seen be on a screen together. But Ryan Murphy maybe did not have the best ideas in the first 2 seasons, despite the show's perfection. How do you feel about things like Glee and the representation of what I think 1993 is inescapably responsible for shaping? That birth of the identity of music as who you are, and 1993's gift of queer music as who we are?
That's a loaded question, and I kind of want to move away from especially the Glee aspect of it, only because I want to save that for a more full discussion of like later aughts, early teens pop culture stuff, because you're right insofar as it really, there is a through line from 1993 to now, but it deserves its own conversation. I think as somebody who firmly identified a lot of my cultural touchstones in this year and in this era, again, to take it back to what we've got on screen with the X-Files versus Animaniacs, when I look at these two, I know that I got a broader selection of cultural understanding from Animaniacs, but I think I found more passion and more depth in what I got from the X-Files and what it taught me about science fiction, fantasy, horror, aesthetics, how it connected to shows like The Prisoner and how it would go on to allow for shows like Buffy. Again, the music that you would get on a show like X-Files, the pop culture music that you would get on a show like X-Files. So that's going to be where my vote is.
I love that you got the opportunity to mention The Prisoner a second time. I mentioned that The Avengers was my BBC series.
Yeah.
Kevo, you got the opportunity to dedicate an episode to Doctor Who, which I can only hope is the first of 17 episodes about Doctor Who minimum. TK, getting to hear you talk about The Prisoner and the way it influenced you as, I think, one of the 2 most important people in your world. It's such a it's such a beautiful reflexive thing to get to say 1993 shaped me. You get to say 1993 shaped you. I bring up how Kevo's influenced me with Glee, and you bring up something that came 20 years before 1993 with The Prisoner. I just think it's a really powerful multi-point reflection with the ability to look at TV so holistically. Now, to jump to the present, it's tough to talk about these. Yeah, these 2 shows, both X-Files and Animaniacs, represent shows that are so important that they are produced by directors who are known for multiple programs, and they are both representations of shows that would go on to see multiple reiterations, while the Animaniacs has only had one TV iteration since its original broadcast. There was the unbelievable. I remember being a kid and going to see Babe just for the Animaniacs pre-movie of I'm Mad.
I don't remember that. I believe it. I didn't see Babe until VHS, which is just not even relevant to anything.
It might have even been the Animaniacs were before Babe 2, but there was I'm Mad, I'm really, really mad, which was like a segment that the Animaniacs did where the Animaniacs went to a theme park and everything was wrong and the professor was like trying to take care of it as their dad. The Animaniacs even have had multiple, iterations of the success of their program, but if you're asking me to pick between these two, I got to give it to X-Files because Tace, you are a
Tace
king.
remembers the song, yeah.
I got to give it to X-Files because my show is Millennium. Millennium takes a really long time to get good, but if you take the time to watch Millennium and X-Files, and you watch them both up to the X-Files Millennium crossover episode, that moment, it's really the point at which I think so much of Chris Carter's vision for sci-fi being able to represent several iterations of the same idea across multiple spectrums of trope hits its apex. I wonder if he ever managed to hit it again without two programs, but it's certainly a moment that lives in my memory, and I only watched it in like 2013 on DVD. So how about you guys? X-Files or Animaniacs? Which one of those two most captures your emotional imagination for 1993?
I already gave my vote, so Kevo, it's all you.
Yeah, no, and I think we're gonna make this a unanimous X. No offense to Animaniacs, but even with how much I feel the X-Files revival lost me, Animaniacs revival never even drew me in yet. So
there you go.
There you go.
Wow. So you're asking us to determine between the quality of being a member of a minority culture in 1993 and being a member of the identity of youth in 1993. Now, I was Cuban in 1993, but I certainly was not a member of the thriving adult community in 1993. So these incredible, beautiful, melanin-filled Black adults represent the identity that I hoped I would capture as an adult. Boy Meets World represents the 1993 I lived in. If you're asking me which of these two most represents what shapes my modern era, I listen to a whole lot more Michelle and Digiacello than I listen to Counting Crows. I think I have to give this to Living Single. Because
Counting Crows, the Boy Meets World example.
Find me whiter people. So I think I have to give it to Living Single because I really felt like Living Single showed me the kind of women and men I wanted to emulate. Boy Meets World represented the boys and girls that I was, but God, those women on Living Single, they were fearless. They were so strong, and I wasn't strong. I came out in 7th grade. I was the first kid that I remember like publicly coming out in my grade. Kids might have been outed before me, but like the idea of the strength that coursed through my veins in that era, that was the women of Living Single more than it was the boys of Boy Meets World. So I think I need to give it to Living Single, like hands down.
Yeah, it's Living Single for me too.
And I'm only voting for Boy Meets World from personal experience with the understanding that it's Living Single. If it was a 2-person vote, I would be voting Living Single and only giving Boy Meets World honorable mention.
Totally.
All right. Okay. X-Files or Living Single? I hate to do this because it's gotta be X-Files.
Yeah. Listen, it's gonna be different for everybody. This is not a quality discussion. B,
no.
There is always a component that is like what what was our thing at the time. None of this is I mean, like, Living Single was a lot of things for me at the time and taught me a lot and gave me a lot and was a huge cultural touchstone. It happens that X-Files was more of one. And if our podcast was run by 3 black women that were our same age, it might just be a flip of that. Might not be, by the way, but, like, just saying, like, this could go either way very quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say, if you're asking me, like, white culture versus black culture in 1993, that's a very different discussion. While I recognize the implications of the
Don't ever ask that question.
Yeah, because obviously black culture in 1993. But if, this isn't exactly Shea Coulee versus Spanky Jackson. This isn't like a ridiculous value switch here. This is specifically talking about how Living Single maybe didn't enter cultural streaming for far too long, while X-Files, that is part of
this really comes down to, you walk up to someone on the street, which one do you think they're more likely to answer? Have you ever heard of X-Files or Living Single? Probably
X-Files. It's
X-Files.
also it's even more like you walk up to me on the street and say, really quickly, pick one for your 1993 pick, and it's just gonna, off the top of my head, immediately be X-Files, but only because, like, that just ended up contributing to so much more who I am. But that is just me. That is my subjective experience. That is my subjective vote. And yeah, I mean, I think we have settled on X-Files for part 1.
But with love a crossover.
Dude, seriously, imagine Dana Owens playing the either role, but I kind of think at this point she would be beautiful for a lead Skinner role.
Ooh,
there is no role that, Queen Latifah, aka Dana Owens,
can't play,
couldn't nail in the X-Files.
So up first we have Kids Being Kids. We have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers versus Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Nico, before you start talking, I want Kevo to go first on this one.
I don't know.
I have no opinions on this one. I was going to off.
I don't know.
I mean, I know what your vote is. I want to know what you think of Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Am I going to pick a team of teenagers with attitudes? Honestly, there are things that I enjoyed about Legends of the Hidden Temple. The colors, the teams, the obstacle course. I was terrified of the temple guards and kind of intimidated by Olmec. But what was the this Mark Sanders looking guy? What was his name?
I totally don't remember anymore.
Mixed Midwestern. Like, seriously, he was like the Michael Malik of the Midwest.
The guy in the denim shirt and the khaki shorts and the boots. Yeah, definitely probably thought things about him for sure. But no, Power Rangers.
Can I just say why I'm going to give my vote to Legends of the Hidden Temple? And I can keep it to an actual short 25 seconds. I'm a game show guy. I'm a multiple game show guy. I like every version of game shows. I like the physical competition show. I like the trivia show. I like the idea that you can succeed simply by trying hard. Legends of the Hidden Temple wasn't a one-step game show. It was a 3-phase game show where you had competitive versions, you had trivia versions, and you had single competition. That Legends of the Hidden Temple managed to hit 3 forms of the concept of the game show, where something like American Gladiators, one of the all-time greatest, and even Mike O'Malley, the sex god of all game shows, his global guts couldn't do. Legends of the Hidden Temple quite truly achieves something that so few shows can achieve, and I'm only comfortable voting for it because it would be insane if TK didn't vote Power Rangers. If TK votes Power Rangers, I'm changing my vote, and I'm going to come up with a really good story about Power Rangers off the top of my head. But
it's Power Rangers. I mean, for what 1993 birthed and gave to us, I mean, it's still running. The actors that it gave us, the culture that it gave us. And Tasty Cake says, wait, so many comments that I'm missing. Shame how David Fielding only got paid $150 for his role as Zordon. Yeah, there is a ton about Power Rangers that is horrible. And Robbie says Power Rangers knocks us out of the park. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it 100% does. Robbie,
by the way,
fuck my drag.
Robbie's never seen the Temple show. Kirk Fogg.
Yeah,
is the guy's name.
I was about to mention that. Yeah, and he has never really done anything else.
No, in fact, the point where he was in the revival like drama movie.
God bless. But yeah, I mean, Power Rangers is everything, and so of course it's gonna get that. Okay.
This is awesome. Tasty,
listen,
that you put together a master marker.
If you guys need to talk about Lois and Clark for some reason, whatever. If the two of you do not vote for the state, I will leave now, and we will not do this anymore.
I've seen every episode of Lois and Clark at least twice. There is no question. As a kid, my dad was obsessed, and whatever my dad said was cool about superheroes was cool. My big brother, as an adult, told me The State is seminal comedy. Have I seen every episode of The State twice the way I've seen every episode of Lois and Clark twice? Absolutely not. But do I recognize the names of The State came to define the identity of humor, the identity of improv, and the idea of the shape of transformative comedy going forward? Absolutely. Lois and Clark represents 1993's identity for 1963. But The State represents 1993's idea of what 2023 could be. For that reason, it would be a fool's errand to give my vote to anything but The State, which gave us the MILF of my goddamn life, Andrea Savage. Anytime she wants to call me.
Was she on it? We have to watch more of this.
No, she was on. She was on. What was the one that she was on? Big guy.
Dog Bites Man, which is later.
Yes, Dog Bites Man. Combined, just moved her over. But The State was just absolutely brilliant sketch comedy in a way that challenged my understanding of what 1993 could do, much in the same way that when I referenced the Dana Carvey documentary Too Funny to Fail last episode, I was talking about comedy that was certainly outside of my ability to appreciate as a child, but as an adult, I understand that my humor could not exist without. Lois and Clark just gave me Dean Cain's Dumb Republican Muscles, and I can find Dumb Republican Muscles on TikTok anytime.
So I want to point out that I at a time agreed with Robbie's comment, never heard of The State. I'd also never really heard of it. And I knew Lois and Clark. As Tori points out somewhere, her best friend is screaming that Lois and Clark is the winner above all. I knew a few very white women who loved Lois and Clark, but I feel like culturally, even in terms of Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher, I don't think Lois and Clark is super present in the cultural zeitgeist. I feel like Dean Cain is now remembered for so many other dumb things, but Terry Hatcher was already and was going to be Terry Hatcher. She just would have done something else in the 90s and still would have been on Desperate Housewives. But so many people,
God, Seinfeld.
So many people came up through The State that even if you've never heard of The State, you know at least 5 people that were on it. 5. I promise. Robbie, look it up. Look up The State and look up this sketch comedy thing. Look at all the people that were on it and look at the things that these people were in that you might know them from. But I promise, almost everyone knows at least 5 people that were on this show.
Stella, Upright Citizens Brigade, Reno 911, Wet Hot American Summer. Oh god, I mean, these are just the big ones right off the top of my head. But then they all go on to have so many feature and guest roles in so many shows. The only unfortunate thing about The State is it is an overwhelmingly male and entirely white, I'm really not queer group of people, but they were a group of very funny white men. and they have continued to all be incredibly funny. This defined comedy for me. It defined sketch comedy for me. It defined, again, that juxtaposition of music and comedy, because the state had a full soundtrack because it was on MTV, so they had rights, they had access to all this music, which then of course did not live on in the DVDs eventually, and so there has been a state restoration project to put it back in, because there are a lot of times where the music actually is a cue for a joke. The best one is just like it transitions from people like screaming "oh" in one scene, and it goes to another scene with a bunch of kids singing "Alive" by Pearl Jam, and it's such a good moment. The state,
I hate
to
when
me,
stuff like that is lost.
again, the Daria restoration project is another really huge one.
And I was just talking to you about the dumbest of all shows, but Sabrina the Teenage Witch from TGIF. There are
and I did look it up.
Missing.
I did look it up. There is there's not a project, but there is forum chatter about how they should get the music back on it. And it's so true of so many shows from this era. But anyway, it's got to be the state. I would just hijack the show otherwise, but I will happily do a longer monologue on this show.
Wait, are you saying you would go full Airheads on X's for Podcast if we didn't?
Oh my gosh!
Mm-hmm.
When did that movie come out?
1996.
Yeah.
Wow, really wild.
Or 95.
Okay, I know what's happening here.
This is literally two of my three favorite comedies of all time. This is absolutely impossible for me to pick between. Can I tell you why I have to give it to Frasier?
I just want to say, Robbie went ahead and did it. Oh, I know some of those actors. Yep. See, exactly. You know some of these people.
You probably know other stuff that they either directed or wrote. Like other stuff that you probably don't realize they directed or wrote. Anyway, sorry.
Still funny.
Robbie remains the sweetest, most wonderful member of X's for Podcast. What a sweet guy. Thank you so much for continuing to be part of our show and contributing. And, taking the time to look up those actors when we're looking at stuff that you've never experienced. I think everybody's probably experienced these two shows. They're the Niles of the 90s.
I had an intro ready. You're stepping on my toes, bitch. So I love that you put these together, though, because right now this is such an interesting time for both of these shows. Mm-hmm. Frasier is about to start again, which, when you think about the fact that the original is 30 years old and is now coming back, wild. And it's also a crazy time for the nanny and Fran Drescher, because she is leading the charge for so many actors, and it's the 30th anniversary of this thing that really made her such a household name for our generation.
So here's the thing. This is two of my three favorite shows, ever. I guess, top five might be a little bit different, but, okay. This is tough, and I can't believe I am turning against my queen, my life, my everything, but there are a few fictional characters I idolize the way I idolize Frasier. He is the most malodious, horrible, god-awful character in the history of fiction. Not really, but, he's a terrible man. God, it's so hard to make this choice. I guess I have to say Frasier, because I think, quite truly, Kelsey Grammer and David Hyde Pierce both give unmatched performances in the history of comedy. And, even when I think about the Golden Girls, for me, Bea Arthur gives a better performance than her runner-ups, who are very close behind, Betty White and Rue McClanahan. God, nobody comes close to giving the performance David and Kelsey can give together. And so many people are so brilliant on The Nanny. So brilliant! But the two greatest comedians of their age were on Frasier together for 11 years, and one of them set his pants on fire on Valentine's Day. And It is the
Oh, we
funniest
showed that to
show.
Jonah recently. He loved it.
It's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, my
Frasier.
vote's for The Nanny for the Jewish representation.
Well, call Binder and Binder.
Yep. Fran Fine being a Jewish woman from Flushing, Queens. The representation of Jewish people as main characters is just... It's the weirdest thing. Behind the scenes, they're everywhere. They're producing all of it. They're writing all the jokes. And yet they don't put themselves into it very often. And we all, I think, know why. But it's something that comes up in comics a lot. That there's just no Jewish characters in comics. None of the leads that Stan Lee made were really Jewish. And it's the same thing here. Like, I guarantee you, so many people involved in the writing and production of The Nanny were Jewish people.
I feel anti-Semitic now.
No,
Jesus
you absolutely,
Christ.
you absolutely should not. Frasier is a phenomenal show. I've seen more Frasier. I have enjoyed more.
Evidently,
Frasier.
it's written by some brilliant Jewish writers, but I'm a monster for. I'm kidding. No, it is really important for me to recognize that I am not one of the three. There's three people in this panel. I'm not one of the two people who share Jewish heritage, and so what you're speaking about is a thing I talked about earlier in feeling that Boy Meets World identified my needs as a different person. I really thank you for bringing that up with The Nanny, which most people write off as a joke.
Must-see TV is hugely important. The NBC comedies of this era just overall are hugely important. Frasier, Cheers to Frasier, back to Frasier now. Huge legacy. The Nanny, not so much. I think we all remember it. I think it actually was funnier than we all realized. I think Fran Fine was a really sexy, funny character that we didn't realize how sexy she was. I mean, she was kind of an Andrea Savage type, but because of the stereotype that they fully realized, that they took a character type. It wasn't a stereotype. It was an archetype. It was a character type. And they so got it that I think people thought it was a stereotype and they thought it was a joke, but it actually really wasn't. So anyway, I want to give it that vote because I suspect that Kevo will also pick Frasier, and I'm totally good with that. But it gives me a chance as a Jewish person to root for the Jewish lady who, as everybody has pointed out, is also the president of the Screen Actors Guild and is doing a lot of the dirty work in the writer's strike and really having to take a lot of the beating and blame anytime somebody says that it is the Actors Guild that is causing this stall.
Real quick, do you want to see Robbie? Robbie said into the chat, I'd like to see y'all do an anime version of this. Do you want to see us do an anime version of Frasier, or do you want to see anime versions of us? Anime me would have giant, table-sized nipples.
He'd be Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist.
Pretty much.
The game that we're playing.
It's Robbie. That is so fucking funny that you mentioned that because I actually have
both of you.
I literally have 1993 in anime pulled up on my screen right now because there were a few
Same! Robbie, thank you is laughing at both of you. You're all idiots. The game.
1993 in anime wiki page open.
Yeah. I've
same.
Because there were a few things that I wanted to make sure wanted to see if we're part of this. Like, I was really shocked to discover that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was from 1993, and I'm not talking about when Jonah has to take the train to see Nico and Kevo.
I would do full 90s anime for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, but Robbie, we will do an anime bracket very soon, I promise you.
All right, Kevo.
Yeah.
Kevo.
Oh, and Tori wants 1993 Broadway. Nico also wanted 1993 Broadway, Tori, just so you know.
I fought for it for 10 minutes.
Tori, you really can come replace me for that episode.
There you go.
Nico, what's your vote? Or sorry, Kevo, what's your vote?
Bitch, you don't know me. Second of all, you don't know me. I was sort of torn on this one in the first place. But as a point of fact, I feel like the chat is also leaning kind of The Nanny. And so, unless anybody has any hard arguments against it, I kind of
No.
err on the side of the chat on this one. And as much
All
as I
right.
love Frasier,
He works for the
and
people.
I'm really looking forward to us eventually covering whatever this season brings. No matter what, there's a holiday episode, so I'm going to want to talk about that in December.
I know we're not getting David Hyde Pierce or Daphne, but we are getting BB Newirth
and Perry Gilpin.
And I just want to say, to speak Tori's language, because Tori is absolutely the most vocal fan of our show, which is crazy because she could be a part of the show anytime she wants. She just chooses to be a fan, which is such an honor and a gift. If I'm the Andrew Lloyd Webber of this series, I think TK is the Stephen Sondheim, and that makes Kevo
like the dungeon.
No, that makes him the Stephen Slater, which means he has the most money because he is willing to listen to the audience and acknowledge what is the trend of popularity. I don't mean that in any way negative. I mean, Kevo, you often really do speak for I have these feelings, but I know that 1993 echoed this. For those of you who don't know, what Kevo is actually highlighting is that The Nanny's ratings in 1993 were by far the highest ratings The Nanny would go on to receive, while Frasier would not hit its highest ratings until season 10. It is unbelievable the way that some shows take a little bit longer to grow into the beautiful maturity they would be, and some shows see it early on. Kevo, I think you're right. The Nanny is 1993.
I think currently the only thing that is keeping The Nanny from also entering any kind of revival, because she was talking about very serious interest right before the strikes began, is that's it. The strikes. I think Rachel Bloom was already working on a musical. Fran was interested in doing more. So, I don't think that there is a Frasier revival means that Frasier wins by any means.
Yeah.
I just want to say that seeing these two people, I know that this is tough because, I know David Letterman.
Garbage.
David Letterman is kind of a pervert.
Interesting. I just let you have this.
But Chevy Chase is a racist, so this is hard for me.
Chevy Chase is horrifying and intolerable to be around.
Yeah, let me say this. I would rather have sex with an 80-year-old who's I'm attracted to the fact that you're 37 than an 80-year-old who's I love that you're not black. So I think I have to give it to David Letterman, I've watched a ton of David Letterman because David Letterman is 80 times funnier than Jay Leno. And when I was growing up, those were your two choices. Conan O'Brien was on later. Check it out. But I think David Letterman shows no signs of racism, just maybe a predilection for younger boobs. Whereas
I
Chevy
would
Chase
say that David Letterman is a bastion of systemic racism. He is not, vocally in favor of it.
But thank you so much for educating me onto some things that I might not always see as a person who likes to think he's so smart as to the sort of.
Hold on. I want to point out, Chevy Chase is vocally a bigot. I don't think Letterman is vocally a bigot. I don't think Letterman would be successful without systemic racism. I think Letterman is a perfectly, and frankly, kind of the same is true of my guys from the state. I think they're brilliant, but I think in a world with a legitimately level playing field, a lot of these white men wouldn't really matter that much. They just wouldn't, no matter how great they are. I think I'm a really, really good writer. I just don't, I have not been successful in writing, and that is completely fine. I think there are a lot of white men who, especially in the early 90s, were successful because they were really in contact with other white men.
I get that.
I think, that's still an enormous problem, but I think it is one that has changed somewhat. Anyway, Letterman is a product of systemic racism that always lifted up perfectly fine white men, but not amazing ones. If systemic racism didn't exist, Arsenio Hall would have had the most popular show instead of Letterman. But Chevy Chase is just straight up a bigot. So I think we're all voting Letterman.
Well, and I love Tori's confusion of Chevy Chase had a show.
Yeah, also did not last.
And also making the point of eyes were on Letterman because of the end of Carson.
Right.
And
But I think Carson's in that mix too.
Can I though?
Please can finish. Please continue and finish, and then I need to have like 75 years after the show and not on air. Talk about the late night wars.
And before you even talk about the late night wars, I even just want to point to I wasn't aware of anything going on with Carson ending and anything to do with Letterman and Leno when I was a kid. But when we were in college, yes. But when we were in college, I was aware of all of the Conan, Leno, everything that was going on with that.
Yeah.
And
we were together when that happened, right?
Yeah. It was after our first program. It was while I was living with Kevin. I assume kids today have no memory of that.
Yeah.
But the next time one of those giant names steps down, there's probably going to be just as similar, some kind of kerfuffle, and everyone's going to think it was the first time and this is a brand new thing. But I think it just... I even wanted to keep this on here because I felt like it speaks to Tori had no idea Chevy had a show. Everyone always feels like Letterman has been on forever, but nope, he started in 93.
And I mean, it has changed so much because we now have things like Last Week Tonight. We have people doing talk shows exclusively on...
I just need to say, and the Tony Award-winning, Emmy Award-winning, and critical favorite that is Amber Ruffin, who needs to be absolutely heralded. We're talking about the late night wars. Amber Ruffin waited 30 years after actually I think it was 28 years. 28 years after the late night wars to become the first ever black head writer of a late night room. The late night wars are still going on because to this day, we still haven't had a queer head writer who is openly out and queer. So at this point, we're talking about a topic that is still raging within Hollywood, despite, as you pointed out about the Jewish community, there are so many queers behind the scenes. Why are none of them at the top of the charts? That's the nature of almost like the education struggle where 80% of teachers are women, but only 10% of principals are women.
Yeah, that's a conversation that could go on forever.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I mean, y'all know what my vote is, so duke it out amongst yourselves.
Power Rangers. Well, the state came on to define humor and absolutely how we think about celebrities. Power Rangers continues to define how our society feels about superheroes. The idea that somebody else could step into Captain America is a result of the popularity and the identity that somebody else could step into the Red Ranger costume. I think Power Rangers prepped our society for the idea that we could be united by the sort of concept of a color indicates your personage. You're laughing hysterically, and TK looks like he's seen a ghost. Did I accidentally say that designing women stars
I said duke it out amongst yourselves, but I did not mean that. I said quickly vote for the state and let's move on.
I think TK thought the state was going to win.
Are you out of your damn mind, Power Rangers?
No, Power Rangers, absolutely. Are you kidding? Of course he's going
no, seriously,
okay.
Coming after your little ghost selves. Power Rangers chomps on all of the state's absolute integrity, absolute credibility, and absolute validity. The state is incredible, but Power Rangers gave us Ika Darville, and you need to rectify your personal beliefs with that.
That's not a...
he was an empire. Check your dick.
So sorry.
Well,
sorry for your loss.
I'm fascinated to hear, Nico, what you're going to be doing with your week next week, because it's not going to involve coming up to Maine.
That's the highlight of my
Power
year.
Rangers.
It's not
okay.
funny. He'll take that
Uh,
seriously.
Sure, whatever. 1993 has been destroyed.
You didn't even show us all of the state.
I
showed
trusted you.
us that shit.
Hold on.
You
I
don't
trusted
get to be
you
mad
to watch the
at
rest of it
that
on your own.
shit. You
'Cause it
didn't
was so
care
good.
enough to show us more.
Listen,
You didn't
listen.
care enough to show us more.
Listen.
Sir.
Half of the most beautiful men on the actual planet. Listen. This is why Tori needs to be on the show 24/7, because we basically turn into the turnpike every time there's a hot topic. I need to point out that Les Moonves is jerking his dick right now because we are talking about Late Night versus the Nanny, and this is the most Les Moonves thing I've ever heard.
Give
If
me
you're
your
asking me,
fingernails.
no! If you're asking me which one of these is more important to me, it's obviously the Nanny. But if you're asking me which one of these is more 1993 and more the definition of what would come on to define humor for the next 30 years, I gotta give it to Letterman.
Right,
It's
but
not
what's your
my
vote
choice.
for?
Letterman.
Okay.
As a comedian, as a guy who loves telling jokes, the guy who loves making people laugh, nobody defended going on 6 things too long like the Letterman top 10 list did. And I am eternally indebted to Letterman for encouraging people to think a joke is funny 70% longer than it is. If it weren't for Letterman, there couldn't be an Office, which is funny 70% longer than it actually is.
Kevo, do you have anything to say about this matchup?
Nick, well, are you? What are you voting? Letterman or Nanny?
Letterman.
Well, then I'm definitely gonna cast my vote for Nanny, especially because I feel like the Letterman of this pairing is like the Beavis and Butthead of its pairing, where
Yeah.
it might have really influenced comedy for the next however many years, but God, I wish it didn't.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm with Tori Nanny by a million.
Yeah,
Guys, why don't we just
I
give Tori
agree with
the
everything.
show?
This
She's
is not
like the literal smartest person on the show. Why don't we just give Tori the show?
So what is this? Power Rangers versus Letterman.
If you guys vote for Letterman, I will murder you in your sleep.
If I voted for Letterman over Power Rangers, I would have to surrender my power chip. I am not giving up my power coin. I am a Ranger through and through. Here's the thing. If you're asking me which is more definitive of the 1993 generation,
I'm not. I was just asking for your vote.
Stand-up, or the idea that even in plastic spandex, we can be superheroes. I don't think we could have a Marvel Cinematic Universe without the Power Rangers, but I do think we could have a Marvel Cinematic Universe without Letterman.
All right. Final matchup for the TV bracket, X-Files versus Power Rangers. I do think this is perfect. I was hoping it was going to be X-Files versus The State. I'm furious with the two of you. I don't know how I'll ever get over this, but I think this one is fantastic. Right off the bat, for me,
well,
what?
Here's a question. What would you have done if it was X-Files versus The State? And let's talk about that anyway. Would you have gone with The State?
I would have voted for The State because The State had more cultural relevance and like more of its fingers throughout the various parts of 1993 culture. That matchup I like better because they both had a lot. They both had a ton of 1993 aesthetic. They both had again the musical aspect of both shows. But for me, The State had more of it, so that's why I would have picked that. Between these two, it is the X-Files. The aesthetic, what it went on to teach me about genre, how it pulled from genres previous to this and set up genres after it,
and pulled from genres like comparative to it. The way both of these shows actually pulled from things like fairy tales, from things like even hyper dramatic shows like 30 something, and made these sort of beautiful parallels. Kevo, you could talk for 45 minutes about X-Cops.
Yeah, great episode. But I have such a smaller window of love for the X-Files It's a show that went through a lot of different eras, and my era, especially as Tori was going through it for the first time this year, and I was experiencing her binging the X-Files with her, and I was like, yeah, this is my window of the X-Files. I don't know anything up until this point, and I don't really know anything after this point. But Power Rangers is something that created a much fuller and more successful franchise, I feel.
Yeah.
So
Nico, break the tie.
Oh, I thought I voted first. This is really tough, but I think technically, at the end of the day, Power Rangers is more influential on the overall scope of how we react to fiction. I think Power Rangers is responsible for things like the Marvel Cinematic Universe more than the X-Files, while the X-Files is definitely a positive influence and reaction to the state of sci-fi. Power Rangers is more responsible for the nature of things now.
Well, there it is, folks. 1993, television in a nutshell.
do we remember who won movies last week?
Was movie Sister Act? I have it downloaded. Hold on.
It was either Sister Act or Adam's Family Values. It was definitely
you
something
sent it.
very kitschy.
Hold on.
Because now I'm thinking, what is... Oh, Nightmare Before Christmas. So, Power Rangers
Yeah.
versus Nightmare Before Christmas, I'm just thinking. That's all.
For me, that would still be Nightmare Before Christmas, but they very close. Oh. That's TV.
Is it me? Oh, cool. I was like, is it me? Are we making a decision about TV versus movies? Did I miss
No.
something?
I was
No, we're
just
just
commenting
talking.
on. Yeah.
Well, TK, you also brought to the fact that, 1993 was not just important for TV, movies, and music, but 1993 was definitive for video games. Something that definitely changed in 1983 was the power of the computer processor. And I think in that regard, something we need to talk about is not just that 1983 was a huge point of change in video games on the PC, but we saw a huge change in consoles around that time, whether it was the emergence of Sonic as an alternate to the sort of standard that was Mario, or even Pac-Man. We saw a huge change in programming in terms of video games in 1993, and I cannot wait to investigate that beautiful change after this break. But if you enjoy the music, movies, and TV, you're going to love video games, and evidently, Tori and I are going to do Broadway, right? But until we make Kevo and TK watch 1,000 Broadway bootlegs.
And I'll tell you guys how to vote on anime.
Oh, geez. Okay. I think we have to do a part 3. Anime and Broadway. Deal?
Sure. I'm down.
I love getting these guys to agree to things on video that they can't take back. But until then, we're going to check out this awesome commercial. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are Is For Show, and we love having you every week.
And we will be, got it, right back.
So, TK, I see your first entry, and I've actually been really curious about your first entry on the list.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I didn't know anything about this.
Did you really not?
No.
Really
Never
super
heard of this in my life.
Yeah, this is like pizza. Never heard of it. So
yeah, I've never heard
I'm
of
shocked
pizza.
that you two, of all people. Back at the height of his popularity doing Battlestar Galactica, Ron D. Moore shot a pilot for a show called 17th Precinct, featuring it wasn't during the height of Battlestar. It was just after the height of Battlestar Galactica, because
is that
everybody...
Jamie Bamber and
because everybody from Battlestar Galactica was on it. You had Trisha Helfer, Jamie Bamber, James Callis.
And James Callis, yep.
But you know who was not on Battlestar Galactica, who was an enormously important person on this show? Abby Bartlett herself. Stockard Channing.
I have to say, I was super into Matt Long, who is pictured here with Abby Bartlett.
Yes.
He was on, was it Sorkin's or Berlanti's Jack and Bobby? That
Berlanti's
WB show. And then he had some other stuff. But yeah.
Oh, yes.
So much of this cast was crazy.
Having seen Stockard on Broadway, that's how much I love her. I'll be ugly for a second. Having seen Stockard on Broadway a few times, actually, I love her so much I could die. She's so
you can also see just over to the left, Isai Morales is there
pre the bad one.
I guess maybe it's post Caprica.
Yes, Tori, Jack and Bobby.
Jack and Bobby, that's right. So
Yep. I think Boss is having some connectivity trouble, but we are back. We are back on X's for Show. How's everyone doing tonight? We are your hosts. I am your producer, Kevo Really. You can find me at KEVOREALLY. TK over here, you can find a TK Elemental, and the gentleman who is a little bit struggling with his buffering is our buff show captain, Nico Action.
Buffering.
Heck yeah. NICOACTION. See, we all know it, don't we? And this is X's for Show, and we are talking 1993. Isn't that right, Nico? 1993.
Yes, we are here to talk about the video games of 1993. We've already talked about the incredible movies, music, and television of 1993. It has been such a pleasure to talk about those topics with these two incredible men and our unbelievable audience, fans, and contributors. One of the things I'm really excited about is our decision to talk about the Broadway of 1993. There's a lot of incredible theater from 1993 that is certainly worth discussing. But what we are here to talk about at this point is actually the video games of 1993. I was, in fact, having problems, as I heard Kevo say. So I was trying to jump in and act like I knew what was going on. Please don't pepper spray my pee-pee.
No, we're good.
Oh, brilliant. So, TK, one of the things that's really important to note is that, like, in 1993, my definition of video games was, Mario Brothers 3, maybe Sonic the Hedgehog 2. My definition of video games is defined by my ability to get my hands on a console. Now, today, we recognize video games on our mobile phones to be more powerful than any console in 1993 could ever have hoped to provide. But, TK, you've managed to cobble together a list of 1993's most definitive and defining video games. Now, that is also to say that these are the games that continue to sort of resonate with our culture, but these were the games that in 1993, if you were a sort of a hackers of the world unite, kind of guy, you might have been playing.
There are some deep cuts that are definitely those, but I actually ended up leaving off a lot of those. And I was able to do so because we're looking at a time in which video games are having the kind of popularity and breadth of offering such that you are maybe not so much a Hackers of the World Unite type of person, and maybe more just somebody who happens to have one of, at this point, a number of consoles in your home. Maybe you have more than one. Maybe you have a laptop. Maybe you have your dad's high-powered laptop that can run one of these games as a CD-ROM game. What do you got?
You have a Tiger Electronics handheld X-Men 1993 animated series based game device.
You know, there's one of those just sitting at Coast City Comics, and every time I'm just like, I should pick that up.
Of course.
But yeah, this is where we start to see, I mean, with the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, we start to see that increased popularity. But because those have now been on the market for a hot minute, we're really starting to see that increased popularity lead to something. And if we are ready to dive into it, I think it starts right with this first matchup. Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, for certain.
Because...
There we go.
Nico, you were talking about, being really into Mario Brothers 3, and this is the launch of Super Mario All-Stars, which compiles the first 3 Mario games. So we're so far...
this box.
Yeah, exactly. So we're so far into video game culture that we actually now can do retrospectives on a property.
Yeah.
You know, when I think about the ability...
Basically.
Yeah, exactly. When I think about the ability to dial into a franchise this way, I think about the sort of opportunity that things like the Scholastic Book Fair offered me as a 7th grader to jump into books that might have had 6 or 7 books out. You know what I mean? Like book series, I should have said. And so having an opportunity like Super Mario All-Stars, while I was a Nintendo boy and not a Super NES guy quite yet, this must have meant the opportunity to engage with the fictional Mario backstory. And I only want to add fictional because there's sort of duality that exists around Mario 3. Having it included in Mario All-Stars is just so tremendous. You know, I love Star Fox and I'm an anthropomorphic Dom Fox man myself, but Mario is a sort of definitive of fictional video game protagonists that you could never hope to achieve outside of Steven Tyler's giant lips or Mick Jagger's giant lips or Liver Lips McGraw of the Country Bears if you are a lead singer.
You're not a fox, you're a bear. TK is a fox.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's true.
I was a Super Nintendo boy and not a Nintendo boy. I did not have a Nintendo. And so I experienced all Nintendo games through friends who had Nintendo Entertainment Systems. And I loved Super Mario Brothers 3 something fierce, but I never got to play it. And when I got a Super Nintendo, one of the things I didn't realize was that I wouldn't be able to play the old Nintendo games. I was like, it's just a Nintendo, but souped up. And so it was like a bit of a blow for me at first. And I remember being so excited when All Stars came out because I finally got it. And at the same time, Star Fox, yeah, it's anthropomorphic animals in space. You really couldn't do better for me. So this is like really, this would have been a hard choice for me at the Toys R Us. Which one do you want to pick up? But now, in 30 years later, I mean, Super Mario All-Stars is, the blueprint for repackaging franchises Mario is the blueprint for video games. Star Fox, incredible cult classic, phenomenal aesthetics.
Okay, yo, but hold on. Find me
What?
Star Fox's $1 billion movie, and then we can talk.
Well, and that's the
That's what I'm
thing.
saying.
I
That's what I'm
think
saying.
Star Fox is really ripe for the picking for something like that. I think
I was
going to
say, I
think
they actually could do that movie.
And I think Neil Patrick Harris has made a career on looking like Star Fox.
I think as we discussed repeatedly in our coverage of Super Mario back in April, so much of that franchise has just been waiting for the right person to say go. Like, Super Mario is already the thing. So yeah, between those two, it definitely has to go to Super Mario. For as much as Star Fox has great potential, and I even was aware of Star Fox at the time, and I was not a video gamester, it really goes to Mario. And this was such a cool concept and such a cool thing to see.
Oh man, I mean, what can you say? So I titled this one Battle for the Other Nintendo Machines because these two games did not come out for Super Nintendo. Link's Awakening is a Game Boy game, and Kirby's Adventure was a Nintendo game, actually. It's also the second Kirby game. The first one, Kirby's Dream Land, came out for Game Boy. Sakurai, who is well known for creating the Smash Bros. Franchise, all three of his games before Smash Bros. Were the Kirby games, which I think is just a phenomenal piece of trivia. But yeah, I mean, I think it's wild that they were still producing Nintendo games in 1993. That's how much the system had proliferated. You'd still do really good numbers. Anyway, for me, of course, it is Link's Awakening because I am a Zelda boy through and through. I have my Triforce tattoo. I listen to Zelda music all day long. Link's Awakening has a special place in my heart, that it is influenced by Twin Peaks, that it is a sequel to A Link to the Past. Just so much about it that I absolutely love. And so, yeah, that's my vote.
Action Pack Cutie also votes Awakening. Robbie S says Awakening.
You know, I just want to say that it's hard for me because as much as I love the Link franchise and everything that Zelda provided for the greater picture of manga, anime, video games, fandom in general, how many people have Triforce tattoos on their forearms?
I just want to say, ruining my day today.
As an overtly pink chubby man, who loves to eat, Kirby is so definitive of so many things. And Kirby originally debuted as a video game that did not feature the eat an enemy, gain the power ability. This was something that that sort of evolved over time and developed within the course of the franchise. So when I think about Kirby, and I think about Kirby's earliest adventures, and I think about Kirby's Adventure, I'm aware that Kirby is a product of listening to fans and thinking about the further development of the franchise. What would Mario be without the Tanuki Leaf? What would Kirby be without the ability to eat your enemies and become something new? I personally like to think that every one of my enemies, when I never see them again, it's because I have eaten the shit out of them and have become a new pale blob. So, I don't want to ruin anybody's day, but I got to give it to Kirby.
Kevo, you know what you have to do here.
I just want TK to like me, so I'm going to vote for Zelda.
That's enough for me! I mean, Nico, come on. What's more 1993 here?
Kirby. Because Zelda is timeless.
Yeah, including the time of 1993.
Hold on. I have never realized, Kevo, until you played it right now, that anytime you need a friend is basically Zelda background music.
Yeah, 100%.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
I was like, Kevo, I do not remember doing a Zelda theme. Did you just find a Zelda theme real quick? I'm happy to lose this one. You know,
Good,
this really a
because you
choice
did.
between two brilliant heroes of the
Yes.
entire franchise.
Kevo,
You know,
thank
Nintendo
you.
as a
Thank you
franchise.
though for voting on my behalf. I do appreciate that. I would not have survived losing Zelda in all of this. Battle of the Fighters, man. Battle of the Sequel Fighters.
Sequel versus sequel. Fight!
Fight!
Mortal Kombat 2 versus Street Fighter 2. This is a tough one, and this is the Wayne's World 2 versus Sister Act 2 of this week's episode, I feel. These are both such iconic 1990s franchises that both have sequels that came out in this year, and that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think part of what we're talking about is the nature of video games to try and recreate a single identity with a little bit more. It's not just that Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter both tried to create more of the same, but they're still doing it 30 years later. I don't think that Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, despite their attempts to break into other genres and other forms of the same video game market, have really, have really managed to land on top in a hyper-competitive industry. If you're asking me which of these two video games I care about more, it's Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat was sexy in a way that Street Fighter wasn't. Street Fighter was punch, punch, punch! And Mortal Kombat was punch, stroke, flex, punch, punch! And so for me, it's Mortal Kombat, just sort of by a flex stroke.
I'm really torn on this one because I feel like, I mean, Mortal Kombat to me right off the bat is kind of the more obvious answer. Bigger
Right.
franchise. I think the impact has been bigger, but when I really think about it, like the Street Fighter Capcom influence, like the way that then takes us into Marvel versus Street Fighter, and then Capcom versus Marvel versus Capcom, the aesthetics of the Street Fighter characters and the kind of real world multicultural sort of around the globe one fighter from like every nation type of aesthetic that we got from Street Fighter would carry over into games like Overwatch. It's just
the modern identity of gaming belongs to 1993's reinterpretation of the multiplayer game, or at least the versus game.
Yeah, and so I'm really, and that is true. That comes from both Mortal Kombat and from both franchises, but I sort of feel like, I guess I'm gonna vote for Street Fighter. It is a very tight call. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I mean, you just vote for whichever. I'm not passionate about it. Vote for whichever one feels right to you.
I was already going to go with, and especially because Robbie is voting as well.
Yeah.
I really feel like Mortal Kombat, but this really was such a good one to put against each other because it really did
Great choice.
represent such a Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC
100% that
of this style. Like not even Backstreet Boys 98 Degrees, like Backstreet Boys NSYNC. This was the, if not one, the other, usually both.
Well, and you know, in the years immediately following, the decade immediately following, even like 15 years, like I said, we had Marvel versus Street Fighter, then we had Marvel versus Capcom. Capcom really took off. But it's been interesting in the later decades, the way that games like Injustice and then Mortal Kombat just on its own pulling in the other Warner Brothers properties. They've both Go ahead.
I only wanted to add that Injustice managed to do it smartly by being at one point available for free on Steam, understanding that when video games took hold 30 years ago, you're now battling against 30 years of successful games, of strong games, of weak games with beautiful elements. To reintegrate yourself into the video game market now requires understanding that you have to give a little bit more, whereas in 1993, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter charged $40 and $50 a game.
Yep.
Oh, that's a lot of dead silence. Okay, Myst
So
versus Doom.
I called this one Gaming Changers because I think these two really changed gaming.
Agreed.
Doom, like, just right off the bat, just was such a popular first-person shooter. There were other first-person shooters before this. Quake, well, I mean, Wolfenstein really being kind of the bigger one. But I think Doom set the curve and set the standard for first-person shooters. I think also it became kind of, yeah, I mean, it set the curve. I said it right the first time. It was really, I don't think we would have the rest of the first-person shooter genre without Doom. And then we have Myst, which aesthetically, graphically, gameplay, I mean, everything spins out of Myst. And it spins out from the 90s into the 2000s, and then our phones are powerful enough to render graphics better, but they can't really game. So we entirely restart the point and touch puzzle mystery genre again on our phones with games like The Room. I mean, they're still making them. So Myst has had this insanely long impact. It's also had 5 sequels, an MMO sequel. The only thing that I really regret is that the other properties, like, there were 3 Myst books that I thought were fantastic that get very little love, that it's never been adapted to anything. That I think is a little bit unfortunate. But these are just 2 giants of gaming overall that really set the standard for their genre. For me, it's Myst.
Yeah, same.
Oh, wow. I am excited to vote for Doom then.
Yeah?
Wow. Hearing everything you're saying, it's sort of like when people go, oh, well, the 60s were the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Well, they really weren't. They included the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and those might have been 2 of the most dominant voices, but you can't overlook the contributions of the Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas, and even the emergence of metal in the form of Black Sabbath. So to simply say that there's only 2 bands that define the 1960s is really tough, but I think in many ways that if you're trying to define the idea of early 90s PC gaming, if you just topped this list off with Quake, Myst, Doom, and Quake really do represent a powerful trifecta. I'm going to give it to Doom because a few more games used the Doom engine than used the Myst engine for me that I downloaded the patches for to make things look like X-Men, that I'm going to have to lean a little bit more Doom than Myst. But I do think that you're talking about 2 of the most culturally relevant elements of video gaming in the 1990s that I can even think of.
Yeah, 100%. But since I've got Kevo on board, it is Myst in this case. I know I'm about to lose.
This is just tough. Who is your Nintendo identity? Is your Nintendo identity the human who represents the unlikely hero or the human who represents the likely hero? If you're asking me who is a little bit more 1993, I guess for me, 1993 is the time that belonged to Mario, though years later would see a lot more strength from the Zelda franchise. I think a lot more about things like Twilight Princess and the success of Ocarina of Time than I necessarily do about 1990s Zelda. But when I think about 1990s Mario, sure, things like Mario Galaxy come to mind, which came afterward. But the pinnacle of Mario's success is things like Mario Brothers 3 or things like Mario 64. So I'm going to give it to All-Stars in this instance.
So obviously I'm voting for Zelda. Kevo, my appeal to you, and I will not melt down if you choose All-Stars, I promise you, only would be that the All-Stars game, while fantastic, represents Mario's past, all the things that are basically not 1993 about Mario. And Link's Awakening being a Game Boy game, so really trying to pull for the portable genre, the fact that it was a pop culture referent game, that it was really trying to continue to do new things for the action RPG genre that Zelda had become known for, to me, it does just feel a little bit more rooted in like trying to be 1993, where Mario All-Stars 4, as fantastic as it is a really great package in 1993 of a bunch of properties that are not of the era.
Yeah. Yeah, I really get that.
Do I have your votes?
You do.
Oh, amazing.
So what do we have next?
Mortal Kombat versus Myst. I'll be so interested to see what Nico has for this one, given that he voted for Doom. It's still Myst for me. If we're talking about changing gaming, Mortal Kombat 1 really does that. Mortal Kombat 2, phenomenal sequel, really builds on the first one. But this is the first Myst game. This is in 1993, what is about to launch 1,000 ships. The ships have been launched already from Mortal Kombat, and 2 is just kind of doing more of the work. Robbie, I adore you. I feel like I am maybe your grandfather.
Yeah, there's times where Robbie speaks, and I'm like, if it weren't for those giant lips saying the thing, it would make me feel like an ancient old man, but I could just get lost in those giant lips. When he says what is Myst, it makes me hurt inside.
Yeah. So Robbie, Myst was a game that came out in 1993, as would be obvious from this. That was it was a point and click mystery game. So it was made in what at the time was called the hyper. Sorry, go ahead.
I only want to say it was the first hyper aesthetic point and click game. There were so many point and click games before that, but that was the first point and click game that used the idea of 3D rendering as an element of gameplay and not simply an aesthetic choice.
I'm just getting for the first time that it was a mystery game and it's Myst.
Oh, Kevo, 6 years ago, and laying in bed next to you and just went, fuck! In the middle of episode.
I get the atmosphere part. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So, and, what's the matter? And I was like, nothing. My foot cramped.
So Myst was conceptually built off of text-based games, which one of the games that came out in 1993 that didn't make it on this list was called Return to Zork, which was a text-based kind of similar game, because in the text-based games you would always be able to go north, south, east, or west, and there would be descriptions in each direction about what was going on, and then you would decide what to do from there. Myst gave you a similar thing in that you could go forward, backward, left, or right, and then interact with things on every basically panel. It was built in an engine that Apple had created called HyperCard, which was this visual programming language that actually I programmed like a dozen games in HyperCard because it was so user-friendly that an 8-year-old could make games in it. And the people at the Rand brothers who created Myst did some really incredible work in making graphics to import into the HyperCard language. But it was essentially just this game in which, you know, you would interact with your environment to attempt to solve mysteries. But as Nico mentioned, it was hyper aesthetic. It was hyper atmospheric. The mysteries were really difficult. The puzzles were really, really difficult.
That was the first Mirk group. That was like, people were like, hey, here's how you solve these puzzles. Let's work together as a team.
Yep. It was real tough. So yeah, that's Myst.
I love it.
That's my vote.
So we're really curious what your vote would be of all people for this one. Yeah.
Kevo, you said which one? Myst?
I didn't vote yet.
Oh, shit. Well, Kevo, what do you think? I know that computer gaming and video gaming as a large part came to you much later and certainly second-hand or third-hand in many ways. Which one of these two games stands out the test of time to you as 1993's game du jour?
I think for me, I'm probably going to have to go with Mist because I think both definitely stand out, but now I'm gonna have to lean personal preference. I wasn't much of a fighter. I didn't play either game, but I was more of like a magic-y person, so I was always
Totally.
fascinated by
And
Mist.
ultimately, Mist does turn out to be a very magical situation.
Mhm.
Nico, would you have picked Mortal Kombat? Or are you voting Mortal Kombat?
Oh, I voted Mortal Kombat all the way. That was my first choice. I just said it 35 minutes ago because I monologued for an hour and a half about 10 different topics.
In this case, you actually didn't, because I was talking about voting for Mist, and then Robbie asked what Mist was, and your Mortal Kombat monologue came from Street Fighter. But good to know. I thought you might vote for Mortal Kombat because you voted for Doom, and I see a lot of similarities between the two in terms of what?
I assumed that Scorpion would be a really good top as a kid, and so like when I was like 11 and like I would be a top, I would be the man one, and didn't know what to do with my 1997 self. I looked to my 1993 self and was like, Scorpion! And so for me, it was definitely Mortal Kombat. Mist was something I saw my cool uncle play, but wasn't something I engaged with personally.
Three incredible books written about the Mist universe, by the way. I highly recommend them. I just want to... Oh, man. How do we end up here?
Zelda fucks. Zelda fucks so hard. And if you don't think Zelda fucks, you haven't been paying attention to what we've been saying. Zelda has never been our last choice. It's simply come in as the runner-up to our primary choice if it has not been anybody's choice here. There is no one on this show who thinks that Zelda is a waste of your time. Link is such a powerful protagonist, despite saying so little across so many games. It is truly a study in how you can create a mythology that defines the fandom in so many ways, despite giving your lead fewer words than a Hemingway novel. I'm going to give my vote to Zelda because Zelda really stands the test of 1993 as an element of video gaming that represents our fictional landscape.
Nico, you are shocking me today in great ways. I'm super happy with all of them. But I actually really had thought at this moment you would end up voting for Mist over Zelda. I mean, I think my vote has to be Zelda because I'm me. But Kevo, I am curious. Any thoughts on this one?
You are the Askanani Link, so I am just so praised.
In a lot of ways, I want to vote for Mist, but it's that thing I said earlier of you walk up to someone on the street, which one have they heard of? Zelda or Mist? I don't think it's going to be Mist. So
yeah, totally.
I think in many ways, having a PC powerful enough to run Mist in 1983 was a financial greater ask than having a console that could run a Zelda game in so many ways.
Yes and no. Having a PC at all was originally a no for Mist. It's actually funny. I looked at this box art and I was really surprised because, like I said, it was built on HyperCard. So originally it was a Mac only game, but it ran on so little. That was one of the really phenomenal things about it. It was based on this really rudimentary language, and it was just essentially these like barely functional still images that you were navigating sort of in sequence more than anything else. So it actually did not require as much power as you would think based on how gorgeous the graphics were. They were just really smart about how they did it, and it worked for their type of gameplay. Regardless of that, Link hath awoken, and let's see who we're going to end up pitting him against.
Oh my God, Secret of Mana could eat your entire life. Oh my God, the Mana franchise is the baby of the Final Fantasy franchise. I am not here to say that Final Fantasy could defeat basketball because I am aware that Shaquille O'Neal could absolutely crush Snow. And I am, of course, comparing large-footed men that lead franchise members of these industries. but Secret of Mana is one of the most perfect games I have ever played. Every reiteration of it, every remaster of it, every reinterpretation of it. Secret of Mana is flawless in a way that NBA Jam would take 10 and 12 iterations to hit. I am not even here to have this conversation. Secret of Mana is near perfect. It gets a 9.5 out of 10 from me.
So I put these two together because...
Just to see me get angry?
No, but I love seeing it. I love seeing you fired up. These are both sequels that you would not necessarily know from looking at the box art, because
did you know that Secret of Mana was the sequel to Legend of Mana? Because it clearly is.
Well, at the time, Legend of Mana was not released in America as Legend of Mana. It was Final Fantasy
Legend.
Yes.
Oh my god, it was Final Fantasy Legend. Oh my god.
It was Final Fantasy Adventure.
Yes.
And so in Japan, Legend of Mana is Seiken Densetsu, and in Japan this is Seiken Densetsu 2. In Europe, Legend of Mana is Mystic Quest. In America, it was Final Fantasy Adventure. So Secret of Mana comes out and it is a sequel game, but nobody knows that. Similarly, NBA Jam is the sequel to the game Arch Rivals, another midway basketball sort of by way of Harlem Globetrotters because there's silliness involved. They both were part of genres that they spun on their heads a little bit. Everybody assumed Secret of Mana would be a turn-based JRPG, but it was actually kind of more like an action RPG. NBA Jam, everybody assumed would be a basketball game, and is, but it spins that genre on its head in a lot of...
So much more, yeah, truly.
It's so much more... I mean, the biggest thing that everybody will remember right off the bat about it is all of the secret players.
Secret players. Yep.
Bill and Hillary Clinton, Al Gore. The list was many, and they were different from the arcade cabinet to the Super Nintendo to the Sega Genesis.
The Sega Genesis, yep. So your response, your shock, is the same relationship I had with the depth and the complexity that some of the sillier shows that you've shown me have reached, whether it's Friends or Glee. You know, just knowing that there is such a wealth in sitcoms and comedies. That's kind of what there is to video games from the 90s. Like, I don't mean to single you out or anything, or signal you, but I know you haven't had the opportunity to be as involved and invested in these franchises, but you would truly be overwhelmed by the quality of the metaverse of things like NBA Jam.
Oh, for sure.
Both of these games have gone on to have long lineages. Secret of Mana kind of still continues. NBA Jam has mostly died off by about 2011. But I found it so fascinating that in 1993, these two games that are both sequels, that are not marketed as sequels, come out, and that they have this so much background and interest to them. I think
their genres, truly.
I think just, because I played so much more of it, I'm voting for NBA Jam. But I don't feel crazy passionate about it. I think these games are about equal in terms of what they brought from 1993 into the future of gaming. And so when I look at all the factors, at a certain point, it's just like, well, which one did I play? And unfortunately, it took me a lot longer to get into Secret of Mana. So it's NBA Jam. And, just playing as Bill and Hillary Clinton is enough. So, Kevo, you got to break a tie again. I'm sorry to do it to you.
No, I never heard of Secret of Mana, so I have to go with NBA Jam.
Very fair.
Just so you know, watch me play it a lot of times. Playing it, I've said, "Oh, it's a Final Fantasy," because that's sort of the nature of Final Fantasy games. It's so many subgenres that you really have to consider the nature of the franchise. You know what I mean? So when I say Secret of Mana means so much to me, I'm talking about it as an element fantasy as a bigger picture. So that you've never heard of Secret of Mana, I think talks more about me as a fan than it does about the nature of the franchise.
And it's really fascinating that this is not actually a Final Fantasy game, and yet it is a child, it is the Kimmy Gibbler, Cousin Oliver, not technically blood family, but always welcome in the house, oftentimes had to be taken in. One thing in a lot of ways couldn't exist without the other in the form we know it today. I just
you would know it as a Jimmy Gibbler.
That's correct. This is the battle of the mans. We got Mega Man versus Bomberman.
Man versus man.
Okay, so I have a friend who was like, "Hey, do you want to smoke some weed and masturbate together?" And was just an absolute total heterosexual.
I cannot wait to see where this is going.
And he was like, "Do you want to watch me play Bomberman and smoke my weed, and then occasionally watch porn while I play Bomberman?" My understanding of Bomberman is absolutely completely colored.
Are you hard as a rock right now?
Isn't he always?
Yes.
Yeah, I am pretty much always. Honestly, no, seriously. Bomberman, I have such a unique, colored, characterized performance of what I understand Bomberman to be. That, I had never heard of this until my friend, who is so hot, was like, "Hey, watch me play Bomberman on my arcade cabinet." I had literally never heard of this franchise. When I think about Mega Man, I think about he's a fighting robot. I think about tons of voice actors who have played this character. He is basically the superhero version of Waldo and Waldog. And if you are from the UK, that is Wally and Waldog. That, I think about Mega Man, and I think about a series of video games that would not only go on to describe the nature of fighting games for single-player adventure, but would go on to describe the nature of retro gaming reintegration of a game into a hardware platform. The Wii could not have been the success it was without the WiiWare success of Mega Man. And I just think that, Bomberman might have a lot of colored perspective sort of special memories for me, but Mega Man much more represents the sort of success that 1993 was looking for as video games were coming into being a successful member of the multimedia market.
What's funny is that Mega Man X is not the 10th Mega Man game. It is the launch of a new series of Mega Man games. It is...
And then get sequels, and it's like Mega Man X1.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Mega Man comes out for Nintendo in 1987 and is so successful in...
and it's not even really Mega Man yet. It's just sort of play through a level Mega Man.
Yeah, it's a platformer. I think it is Mega Man X that really, in the same way that Kirby, Tori says, "My dad loves Mega Man."
Tori doesn't want to hear this, but everything about Tori's dad conceptually is very attractive. Tori has the king gay dad who is a straight man. It's terrible for her, I'm sure.
There's a lot of Mega Man mechanics that come out of Mega Man X.
It's the defining game of the franchise that would go on to define all of the multiple platformers that would be on all of the other different platforms, whether it's N64, the Game Boy, the GBA. Mega Man X is the franchise definer. One of the things that's so important about Mega Man X is that the crew of enemies is so defining of Mega Man that there is not another Mega Man game in the entire franchise that would go on to have enemies anywhere near as significant as Mega Man X would come on to redefine. Kevo, I know that Mega Man and things like Bomberman maybe are outside of your wheelhouse, but I want you to think about the fact that the first season of Doctor Who had the Slovene and essentially the Daleks, while the second season of Doctor Who would go on to have the Daleks and the Cybermen. When you go on to think about things that would describe Doctor Who, you think about multiple villains in the same season arc. Mega Man X is a little bit closer to that idea of the second season of Doctor Who's revival than it is of the first season of Doctor Who's revival, which is a little bit more Bomberman.
I've never heard of Bomberman in my life, so I have to give it up to Mega Man only because I've heard of that, and I do remember having seen the anime, or like at some point when I was a kid on some channel on some early morning. I really don't have any memory of Bomberman. Maybe even the name, but looking at that box, I don't recognize that character.
I also think it's worth pointing out that Mega Man originally was intended to be a video game adaptation of Astro Boy, which, when you look at Astro Boy, makes so much sense.
Wow.
And it's almost silly that these two exist as separate things because they are the exact same thing. So, you know, that's another, like, such a 1990s thing where, like, you're pitching an idea for a product based on a thing that just whoops you don't have the rights to, so you just keep going with your concept and don't call it by the name that you didn't get the rights to. And even though it's so obvious that the two things are the same thing, you are not in any breach of, a contract or, breaking copyright. So now you just have Astro Boy and Mega Man, who look so similar, do so many similar things. Sorry. Tori says, Nico and I talked about this. My dad loved Astro Boy, which is perfect because Astro Boy is just Mega Man.
Look, if Tori's dad looked like Frank Grillo at 57, I would fall in love with Tori's dad. I just need to be really clear with that. Tori's dad has all the greatest taste in the world. Tori's dad is like, if you get the opportunity to hang out with Billy Joel, he's just a cool guy. So if you're asking me these two games, though, I just wanted to, Kevo, do you have a thing?
I do. Speaking of Tori, first, about 17 minutes ago, Tori commented, "Oh snap, this is the year of Disney's Aladdin video game. My cousins played it all the time, and I have been waiting until we got to this entry for Platformers Gone Feral, Aladdin versus Cool Spot."
I did title this Platformers Gone Feral, and I think feral for so many reasons. One, these two games are, the gameplay is insane. And two, we are in peak just adapt anything. You just put it on the system and sell the game. If you have an IP that's a TV show, a cartoon, a movie, Home Alone, Aladdin, it doesn't matter. Get it into the Super Nintendo or the Game Boy. Get it on a cartridge. It's probably going to be a platformer. It's probably going to be borderline unplayable, but the kids will buy it because they recognize it. Yeah. And this gets so severe that literally the red dot from the 7-Up can...
Who even remembers that mascot in the first place?
I mean, sadly, I do because I'm 1,000 years old, but what?
Can you imagine the W from a Schweppes can getting its own video game? That's what the 7-Up dot getting its own video game was. Like, that is like if the Diet from Diet Coke got its own game. I don't even know what to say about that.
Yep. Cool Spot. And, both games feature gameplay that is just sort of unhinged. Aladdin is notoriously difficult. The Disney games of this era are notoriously difficult. What's it called? Lion King, also just wildly difficult. These two games got re-released together for the Nintendo.
You jump from one branch to the other branch, and then you fall, you bounce off. It says you have 2 more lives, then it says you have 1 more life, then it says you have 0 more lives. I hate that game.
If you are paying very close attention, you can see in the bottom right corner, the last 2 that we are going to do are Star Wars games. There were actually 3 that came out this year, and I left off Super Star Wars Empire Strikes Back because it just kind of falls into this exact same category where it is an insanely difficult platformer. Anyway, these two
my
games...
God, Tori said she feels like she's having non-flashbacks seeing that dot, but you saying that about that game that I forgot existed.
Super Star Wars.
I feel so validated.
Tori saying that this is giving her flashbacks just proves my theory that Tori is the female Punisher. That is all I want to say about that. Victoria Castle, by all means, mow down your nemesis. So we're giving this to Aladdin because we're not dummies, right?
Yeah, 100%. And Aladdin musicals, sequels. Does 7-Up still exist?
I definitely have 7 and 7 in the last 6 months, so I hope so. It's one of those situations like when you order a new Coke and Jack, and they're like, "Oh, we've got new Coke," and I'm like, "Oh God, I was making a joke."
I feel like if I looked it up, the composer for this game would be someone stupid or surprising, like Michael Giacchino or something too. Because a lot of those composers back in the day were really random people who turned out to have careers. So,
all right. So, Cool Spot was composed by Tommy Talaracchio, who was from he was active in 1991. He's from Springfield, Massachusetts. He had a whole career in video game music. He worked on Earthworm Jim, MDK.
Favorite.
Go on to work for wow. He would go on to work for Electric Playground. Wow, he founded Electric Playground. Wow, what a team!
Damn.
He is what a genius this guy is. Wow. Sorry, this guy's a real king. It's on you. Oh, okay. I'm going to give this one to X-Wing. You know, when you think about X-Wing versus Rebel Assault, one of the things that's definitely important to consider is the legacy of these games as far as they relate to the overall Star Wars legacy. You know, when I think about Rebel Assault, I think that's the game that definitely went on to influence people's story writing, perhaps, but X-Wing is a game that people still talk about to this day. It's a game that when it gets re-released, people pay attention to. X-Wing is definitely an element of the Star Wars vernacular that continues to dominate the video game landscape. While I think Rebel Assault is definitely an important part of that same conversation, I think X-Wing is more an important part of 1993 than Rebel Assault is.
Rebel Assault sucks and is so unfun to play, and
they've re-released it 4 times, so it can't suck that much.
Because the nerds will just pay for things. But X-Wing is in every way a better game, and so much more the basis of what. For one thing, nobody does rail shooters anymore. They only do them as nostalgia genres. Like they just re-released Panzer Dragoon again. What?
And because I feel like in many ways, 1998, 1999 was sort of the furthest evolution of the rail shooter that was possible. And in so many ways, we've been looking at ways to evolve a form of like static art. And so while I think, X-Wing in 1983 was cutting edge, there wasn't a whole lot more edge to push.
You mean Rebel Assault?
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. But yeah, X-Wing, phenomenal game. The basis is so much cool stuff. Kevo, do you have anything on either of these?
No, so I trust you.
I mean, these are honestly like kind of obscure. I really did think about putting Super Star Wars on here because it's actually the better known game.
Okay, but Super Star Wars is a disaster.
It is.
I was other Star Wars media at this time, which is a completely different conversation about the media that managed to keep Star Wars alive to the late 90s.
100%.
Was this Young Jedi Chronicles for you? Was this in that era?
I didn't read those until I was a little bit older, but this is around the time that they were being released. This was around the time that Han and Leia had their twins. This was a big era of Star Wars media was still going on and being very popular.
However, talking about this pair-up, Shaquille O'Neal did not have a dog that could eat its nemesis and then gain its abilities.
Yep.
So it has to go to Mega Man X.
I gotta agree there.
Yeah. I was just taking my time to put it on screen.
No worries.
All right, Mega Man X. All right, next one. Oh, geez, Disney Aladdin. When I think about games that, dominated the scope of the 90s, Aladdin was such a humongous part of so many people's video gaming experience by virtue of being a mainstay for 5 solid years at Disney's Innoventions West. Mm-hmm. If you ever went to the Disney parks, you played Aladdin, and so that means that Aladdin is your game over X-Wing. Period.
I was really going to argue with you, but you're right. We're talking about 1993, the best of 1993, and this is just not Star Wars time. It had its time. Its next time will be coming up, but this is now kind of just a random time. And the great Star Wars video games, even that are not, that come out later in the 90s, come out later in the 90s. They're not. X-Wing is the first glimpse of greatness, but it is nowhere near there. So anyway,
it was important to represent, and specifically to represent how many there were, that there were two to pit against each other and still more. And yet this still wasn't peak Star Wars games in the 90s.
100%. That is exactly it. But Nico, I appreciate you really did convince me. However, I don't think it goes through to this pairing.
No, I think at the end of the day, you need to talk about what is really the defining, but I mean the defining, the deciding, the divining, the overall picture of 1993 as a video game. It was not the adaptation. It was the boldness of Mega Man X as coming up with a platformer that said, hey, we're not just Mario. We're not just the Castlevania, the Metroidvania. We are looking to promote a new idea in video games. Mega Man X represents so many ideas that would go on to predominate the idea of what a platformer could be, especially as the Switch would look to new ways to offer multiple platforms for the same iteration of gaming. Mario borrows from things like Mega Man X as much as Mega Man X borrows from things that came before it, like Mario.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And this gets us... Everybody knows what my vote is.
Oh, I have to agree. I mean, Zelda is quite seriously one of the most important franchises of all time. Not video games, but truly, Zelda dominates the idea of what we think of when we think of the idea of the sword and sorcery hero. Even when you think Aragorn is the manly version of Zelda. You don't simply think of Lord of the Rings without Zelda in the conversation. However, the idea of the superhuman, the robot human, the sort of RoboCop, I don't know that you need to associate Mega Man with the idea of the RoboCop. That means that to me, when you talk about 1993 as fiction and 1993 as video games, Zelda ascends to a higher level than necessarily Mega Man is capable of. For that same conversation, I think there's a lot to be said about Mega Man's discussion of taking your enemies and incorporating some part of them into you. Now, like on a literal level, I don't think Mega Man necessarily addresses the idea that the hero has to become a little bit part the villain to succeed. But I do think that Zelda works to incorporate its universe into it. While you are Link, this young man who doesn't understand the world around him, you come to understand the magic of the world around you and incorporate it into who you are and thrive as a result of incorporating your environment. Mega Man, while he does thrive as a result of incorporating his environment, does so by destroying the environment around him. 1993 was hallmarked by the idea that 7 years later would be the Millennium Tribe culture. I think for that reason, simply stated, as we are talking about what is most 1993, Zelda's idea that the environment around you could be part of how you thrive and not simply how you defeat your enemies is a little bit more 1993 than Mega Man X's determinants that you can assimilate, appropriate, and dominate. For that reason, Zelda gets my vote.
I'm too dumb in my love for Zelda to articulate further what has been said here. I mean, this game is just perfect to me. The only thing I will say is, like, in terms of like 1993 reference, the fact that this game was so heavily influenced by Twin Peaks feels very important. I brought it up earlier. It remains as such. Phenomenal music, phenomenal gameplay, would go on to be really important for portable gaming, for the Zelda franchises.
A hallmark of remakeable games.
And the fact that it just received its 3D Nintendo Switch chibi toy style Link remake that is just as good. Really exciting. I think it's fantastic. Kevo, any thoughts on this one?
I'd really be fascinated to learn more about the Twin Peaks influence.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many incredible articles.
Yeah, I will send you information on that.
Yeah, I would probably also say, yep, we did it.
So, real quick, before we end,
Hello, the time scales.
Greetings from San Francisco. Hello from across the entire nation.
Eastern Seaboard.
In Portland, Maine, Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Is lovely.
And Sayreville, New Jersey. Guys, real quick, Power Rangers versus Link's Awakening. I think I know how we're all voting, but please sound off.
You know, when I think about Link's Awakening, I think about a single iteration of a larger picture of a larger franchise. Link's Awakening represents a single step in the identity of the Legend of Zelda and the Link franchise. But when I think about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers as an identity that began in 1993, one of the things that definitely stands out to me is the idea that 1993's Power Rangers was full of a promise, was full of a possibility that 1993's reinterpretation of Zelda was maybe a little bit less full of. While I think Link's Awakening is definitely one of the most important games of the franchise, it was a game of the franchise that reinterpreted a central idea. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 1993 gave us an idea that we could continue for 30 years. That said, I think Link's Awakening gives us a beautiful idea every 3 years, every 2 years, and for that reason alone, I just need to thank Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for dominating my identity and my idea of what fiction could be in an anthology format.
I love it. Kevo.
Power Rangers.
Yeah, that's okay. I love Power Rangers too.
But you know what? I don't think Power Rangers beats Nightmare Before Christmas at the end of the day. So
yeah, there you go.
The crux of 1993, I think what we ultimately found was Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yep, that's the one. That is the true champion of 1993.
Oh, for sure.
Holy heck. We got through film, music, TV, games, and at some point
we still have so much more to say.
I was going to say, we've got more to say, and at some point we will do Broadway and anime, and man, 1993. What a year. Happy 30th birthday, 1993.
Happy 30th birthday.
They and the wife ticked Maine off their bucket list by spending the week there in 2015, mainly Kennebunkport.
There you go.
Time scales.
You missed it, but earlier I grew up in Kennebunkport, and in 1993 I was still playing games on my Commodore 64. No joke. I love that. I was playing on a Super Nintendo in Kennebunkport, Maine at that time, but now I'm in Portland and playing on a Nintendo Switch, and unfortunately not on a PC because the power supply that I bought for it is dead on arrival. So we'll see where I get on Monday when apparently the new one is supposed to arrive.
Well, you know, between now and then, we are not going to have an episode. There is not a planned episode for this Sunday.
We're taking a break.
We're taking a break. You know, we try to take one Sunday off, maybe one Saturday off a month. But, you know, for the most part, we bring the show to you every Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday here on YouTube. But our incredible partners over on our podcast form, whether it's in the form of X is for Show or X is for Podcast, continue to publish content 4 days a week. That means you can check us out 7 days a week here at the Action Pack. But until we come back to bring you more amazing media response content, Kevo, where can everybody find you on the interwebs?
Ostensibly, you can find me on the internet at Kevoreally. That's Kevoreally. But I spend most of my time putting things together and trying to make this the best show that we can possibly have. And this has been such a fun time. This was such a surprising topic for all of us. And you know, I'm sure we're all a little bummed to be skipping a Sunday this week, but that just means we're going to come back even more excited with even more to say next week. So watch out.
Oh yeah, we got some real thoughts.
Oh, and we are Real Thoughts, so there will be a lot going on. And until
Also,
then,
that just gives me more time to finish Only Murders in the Building, which I'm stoked about.
Which is like one of
Yes.
the most perfect shows ever made.
When is the finale for that? It's coming up. So we have the finale for that coming up. We got the premiere of Loki coming up. We got so much great stuff coming up. And in
Yeah.
the interim, TK, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at TK Elemental on all the social media platforms. And Nico, where can everybody find you?
You guys can find me.
Tails.
You guys can find me freaking out about how much I loved the Drag Race Down Under finale, which featured my favorite in 3 seasons of Drag Race Down Under sort of fandom, superstardom, none other than the incredible Spanky Jackson, who debuted 2 looks, that sexy varsity look where he said that his dick is awesome, and then that awesome look where his butt was awesome. So I'm really excited about coming back next Sunday to talk about a whole lot more reality TV. But before that, while it's certainly not this Sunday, next Wednesday, you can check us out talking about more comics. Saturday, another special topic. We're getting pretty close to Halloween, so it might be spooky, but we'll see what happens. But you guys know you can always find us Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays here on YouTube. And you can check us out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday over on podcasts, where we bring you guys our favorite media response coverage 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is our privilege to be part of your media experience. And until next time, there's only 3 things you got to do, guys. That's 3 things and 3 things only. Number 1, I need you guys to stay safe. But after you do that, you got 2 responsibilities. Number 1, you got to be brave. And number 1, you got to evolve daily. So stay safe, be brave, evolve daily, and we're going to see you guys here on Wednesday here on Is For Show.
Bye.
Oh, I'm going.